The strangest thing of all when starting these shows again after such a long break is that it's so weird getting back into the format again and trying to remember how to do it smoothly. So, yeah, let's just wait until the show catches up. As it takes a good few seconds, I think we're live. Welcome. Awesome. Okay, great. Let me start by welcoming everyone here. Mr. C, Thomas, Mr. Gumby. Who else do we have? Tim. Let's see. Junior Johnson, Clive, Ben, Blue Shirt. Welcome all of you. Underachieving. And many, many more of you. Geez, Showcase watchers, I see, Flip and Zippo. Welcome everyone to the show. It's been a long time. I think it feels like it's been at least 3 weeks at this point since we last did a show. There's a good reason why. I've needed a break. I've needed a bit of time off, I would say. The thing is with these shows, sometimes they can get a little bit taxing on the mind. 3-hour sessions can run you down. So it's been good to just relax and focus more in on the creating of content instead, preparing 3 or so weeks in advance. So that's kind of what I've been doing. It's the weirdest thing. Like this video that came out this week, I think I prepared at least 2 weeks ago, but it's just, time delays and preparing, and, you always have to think 3 weeks ahead, as always is the case. Welcome. Okay, so how do I start with everyone here? Jeez, it's packed. Tennessee, Mike, B-Dev, Sam Ray, Mason. If you guys would like to get my attention, please tag me in the chat, as we always do, and we can start rolling. Where to even start? So what I'll first address is the last live show that we had a couple of weeks back. Essentially what happened, what should I show you on the screen? Is this okay for a presentation? I'll show you the Explorer. So essentially what happened was at the 3-hour mark, lots of whiskey had been consumed, and I got the giggles for about 15 minutes, and I lost the plot completely throughout that time. And so what I wanted to do was I made the video private. I went in to process and try and get rid of those 15 minutes of me laughing uncontrollably. And the end result was that YouTube's processing time took over a week. It removed the things I wanted to keep and kept the things I didn't. The formatting of the processing machine really it's not streamlined at all. So technically, in the end, we got the show ended up being an hour long. Really bummed me out. So I thought, okay, take a few weeks off to try and recollect and get back and start again. Refresh. So for all of you who sent in watches for our last show that you never saw them, I really do apologize. It's on me. But there are like 16 more of these episodes in the background, and this is episode number 17. I don't know. I can't keep track anymore. More of you who are joining in, I did live. Yeah, that word has been banned, but it's such a common word now that we will see it everywhere in the chat, and it's just, it's the way it is. Matthew, Scott, Reed, Mark P, great to have you. Megan, great to have you here. Tetley. And so it is, further and further. Chip, Flip and Zippo again. Yeah, you guys are just going to keep writing. 121 click bezel. Okay, so let's get into the show. How do what should I talk about first? Okay, well, the watches that I've been wearing, it's when it rains, it pours, basically. And so it started with receiving an Explorer to review, which I have for about a month. And then something else happened, quite surprisingly. And Showcase Watches, James, who's in the chat, he sent me a message saying, I know you critique the Black Bay 58 navy blue. I think you need to try it out. So let's just run through some of these photos that I decided to put together. For once, I decided to do a little bit of a compilation of what I've been doing. Took the phone out and got some clouds the other day, which is nice. Hitting the water. It's raining. Yes, it is, Clive. You're right. And everyone else joining, again, tag me in the chat if you want to get my attention quicker. It can be difficult. The chat does move pretty fast. What next? Seamaster and Tudor. Okay, so let's just let the cat out the bag. So at this point in time, I have the trilogy, in a way. I have a Rolex, Omega, and a Tudor in the collection, all very different. And it's going to be so exciting to do a comparison between these 3 watches very soon. And I can't thank James enough. I see him in the chat there. Cannot thank you enough for sending it in. He literally suggested it the day before, sent it the day after, and I got it first class in the post. Royal Mail is incredible. And yeah, I have this watch for a month to look at and to wear. And seeing these two side by side, it's quite amazing. Got to say, the Tudor has definitely changed my opinions of the watch overall. I've criticized this blue dial, blue variant a lot lately, mainly because of the hype. I think that's what really gets us irritated in this space, because it's a blue watch and all the information surrounding it. But in actuality, seeing it in the light, seeing it on display, there is a lot to appreciate. Build quality. There's some features and traits about this watch that I really do like next to the Rolex, because things like the clasp. I find the clasp a lot more streamlined, a bit more lightweight, could I even say. It's less bulky. It's a lot more comfortable to wear. Articulating bracelets, hollow styled end link and everything there. And it's pretty amazing seeing all three brands in one place for once. I never knew this was going to happen a couple of weeks ago. So it's really an honor and a privilege, not only running these shows, but connecting with all of you and being able to have emails and conversations and going out for drinks. And this hobby is a lot of fun, as we all know. And as we will see this morning, wherever you are in the world watching the show, you're going to have quite a feast of pieces to look at. Everything from high horology to micro brands and everything else, because the variety is just what makes it special. I've said this like 15 times already, but the uniqueness about the show is seeing what other people are wearing, not so much seeing what is being advertised to us all the time. So you'll find lots of hidden gems in between places. So yeah, let's carry on through with what's going on. Samurai saying, what other straps would you put on the Tudor? I want to put the Tropic strap on this. Tropic with a deployant I have, which would be very nice. Grey NATO is always good. A Phoenix, what do they call it? Admiralty Grey, another example. There's so many options, really. And again, I think I should just mention this, put this video out this week, comparing the Explorer and the Smiths in a bit of a different way. I'll put the drop down in the corner of the screen as the show replay, just to highlight it if you'd like to see it. I don't look at them price-wise and all of those details. I focus mainly on their aesthetics and how they have evolved over 50 years, and thought it might be a nice effort to look at these two pieces. So yeah, can't wait to look at the trio eventually. But the Tudor hasn't left my wrist for about 3 days, and Showcase says I'm really going to try idguy when I send him the Submariner and Batman GMT. Oh, geez. You're going to kill me, Showcase. I must say, our perspectives on these pieces do, because I mean, I kind of persuaded you to pick up the 57 Seamaster, right? So yeah, you're doing the same with this. And the worst part is the color of this watch matches my eyes, and it's nuts. It's like a gray blue. It's not a royal deep blue. Fascinating piece. Really plays nicely in the light. Okay, let's get into the show and start by talking about the watch that made the cover. Right. Now, Julian, I think I saw Julian in the chat a second ago. This is a Patek Philippe reference 5205G. It's probably one of the most high-end pieces we have. We have a few others, some very good ones from alternate brands. But this one, to me, it's one of the prettiest Pateks I've ever seen. It is gorgeous. But the story behind it's even better, actually. Basically, he sold a Hulk Submariner when all the hype was going on a couple of weeks back, paid a bit more cash, and he got himself into an annual calendar Patek. That is how crazy the watch market is at the moment. And that's what makes it pretty entertaining. I think it's a fantastic story. So let's have a look at some of the pictures he sent in. And as far as the cover photo goes, there were a few contenders. There were some excellent shots for the show. And as most of you probably know, to get the cover photo shot, you need a bit of sleeve or a bit of arm to show there so we can put the text on. But this, with a bit of rain on the window and grass in the background, makes it stand out nicely. This piece overall, what I like about it, I mean, it's tuxedo black. It's got some gray accents to it. It's a full annual calendar, but seems so understated in a way. It's got channeling through the lugs, which we'll look at in a moment. It's just so easy and pleasurable to look at as well. It's not in your face. It's not bright at all. From close, and this is from far, we can appreciate this piece a bit more. I think it's just amazing. You know, we look at everything from Pateks to micro brands in one place. And you get to, this is the first time I think we've ever highlighted a Patek at the beginning of the show, but I thought, you know, it's a good watch to present, especially the story, selling the Hulk and forking out a little bit more cash to get an annual calendar. Now that raises enough questions. I mean, that could be a video topic by itself. How crazy is the watch market at the moment that you can do something like this and get away with it? It's almost criminal, you know? Okay, hitting the water, getting back into the chats. It's going wild. I don't know how long I'll be able to pay attention there. Anyway, let's go. Right. Lots of new names. Welcome, everyone. Done. Demetrius saying hello from Greece. Fantastic to have you here. Clive, you're not going to stop all evening, and that's fantastic. Until you're requested on the other channel. Yeah, and everyone else who is joining, I'm sure I've missed a couple of you. Welcome. Really look forward to sharing your pieces and as we go. Next up, we're having a look at the movement, a bit of a closer view. These shots are incredible. I did see Julian in the beginning. Blue Shirt asking me what I'm drinking. Not bourbon this time, just a plain Jane Merlot. Wine, had a double shot of coffee to get me going. I've been exhausted recently. I started doing calisthenics again a couple of weeks back, and it takes it out of you. Huh? Banging 3 protein shakes a day, as well as working and everything. By 9 o'clock, I'm yawning. So yeah, coffee is imperative at the moment. Such a cool piece. I mean, really, I think the presentation and then the side view with the channeled out lugs, very unique. We normally see these channeled lugs only used on platinum models, if I'm not mistaken. How many jewels does this one have? I'll have a look. Let's have a look. We see 34 jewels adjusted to, I would imagine, 5 or 6 positions. Really clean. And the thing is, I mean, it's a full annual calendar complication, but with this large rotor here, you wouldn't realize, it's a very basic looking movement, actually, considering what this watch is housing in the background. And we're going to see a few of those coming to the end of the show. If Russell is here in the chat, we'll see him later. He sent in some gorgeous shots of his lungers, and yeah, we're going to appreciate movements galore later on. Okay, so let's get into the first set of pieces. And this came in from Alon. I think he's a pilot, and he sends in all sorts of pieces normally, but this time it's just a Speedmaster Professional. And this plant was just fascinating and freaky. This is something that inspires science fiction, I think. It looks like some kind of cactus of sorts. What would you call it? I've got to get my brain warmed up. We've been doing this for 10 minutes. But yeah, overall, Speedmaster on a shark mesh bracelet is a nice change of pace. We don't see it very often. And I mean, this is my favorite mesh. If you can go out and find a mesh bracelet, this is the way to do it. Exposed spring bar with the mesh actually wrapping around it. It looks so much more organic, and less manufactured. It looks a little bit more purpose-built for the watch on the wrist. Yeah, overall, Speedmaster Professional. I think we have a few of these. What's crazy is that I'm the only one with an Explorer 1 this evening. And I think we have about 5 different Explorer 2 black dials, and that's it. I think we've spoken about this before, that sometimes we get so many duplicates of the same watch, like the Polar Explorers. And this week, it is literally all black dial, 5-digit reference Polars. Or should I say Explorer 2s? Plant is a star, Palea, Chi-Town. Thank you. You see, you guys are so resourceful. It's fantastic. You make the presentation so much more interesting because there's like a million other brains on the other end. It really creeps me out. I mean, I've come from Africa. We see all sorts of succulents, is the right word. We see all sorts of them there, but this is kind of South American, kind of Mexican desert life, right? Yeah. So really quite horrific. But thank you for this, Alan. Good way to start the show. Kind of wakes up everyone. Okay, next we're jumping to Ant G. Maz is asking what happened to the previous show. I spoke about it in the beginning. Basically, I privated it because I burst out laughing at the 3-hour mark. Wanted to cut out 15 minutes of the show, and the YouTube processing took a week to do. Ended up cutting out all the things I wanted to keep and left the things I didn't want to keep. The show ended up being an hour long. The 3 hours of the show was trimmed down to an hour, and it basically wrecked the show. The processing, and it must have been my stupidity of trying to cut the show the way I wanted it. YouTube wasn't good enough to cut it the way I like to see it, and the show went kaput, basically. It was really bugged me. That's why I've been off for 2 weeks, trying to recover strength and get back into it. Presenting all of these and getting it prepared, only to not have the watches shown bugs me. So, we forgive and forget, start all over again. That's where we are at the moment. Right. So it is. Let's carry on here. So what is the next? So the Trinity from Ant, right? So this is his main trifecta of pieces in his collection. He always sends in a great set of pieces. He had a Lunga at one stage, and he's just recently traded for the Royal Oak. So what do we have? A CHNR, Patek Philippe 5227 Calatrava, I think, and a 15400. If I remember, Raymond saying, glad you're back. It's nice to be back. It's so peculiar trying to get back into the presenting format again. When you're preparing videos, it's much easier. You've got editing and everything to help you out. But when you're doing it live, trying to get back into the swing and talking to people again, it's a bit peculiar. Gorgeous setup of pieces. I mean, he calls this the Trinity of his selection, and I must say it is pretty special. And he did also send us a few movement shots. Now notice the 5227, what makes it unique is the hinged caseback, which is stunning. Hinged caseback, basically they call it the officer's caseback. And look at the movement. Now we've just had a look at that annual calendar movement and it looks exactly the same here. This has 29 jewels as opposed to 34, but it still looks just the same. Quite amazing that they can exercise such restraint. You would expect when you're dealing with the higher complications, you want to really expand on it and go deeper into how gorgeous these things are, but it's nice to see they have a format that they stick to with a lot of these. I don't know how, when it comes to watchmaking, I'm not the person to ask, as most of you probably know. And the next shot from Ant is also the case back of the Royal Oak, which is also stunning. So it's going to be good. We're going to see a lot of movement shots actually from some private brands, not micro brands, but what we say independent brands later on. And as it is, it's just going to get more and more and more. Flip and zipper for Amazon. I didn't read your message. I've been so busy getting all of these together today. I will read your message later, Flippin. Thank you so much for the super chat. And showcase Rolex Omega Tudor Patek JLC VC, and it takes just one watch to destroy me. Yeah, just one watch, a very specific watch, very unique brand. More wine. Here we go. So, the stainless steel Nautilus. What's funny is that the vintage pieces are actually quite reasonable price-wise next to these modern ones. And that also raises a few questions. I mean, we could quite literally base a discussion around there's subgenres everywhere. I need to go back and try and write down some of these, and we can maybe make discussions out of them in the future. That as far as a three-piece set goes, the CHNR, we're going to see a few of these in the show. That's the root beer GMT. And it is quite a special watch. I've mentioned so many times that the color, the use of rose gold with the brown effect, and it would be nice to see brown on the dial as well, just to complete it, make it a little bit more whole, less like your standard GMT, and give it a bit more of an X factor. But overall, such a great everyday wearing watch. All of these are, and that's important. So, Ant, I think I saw you earlier, but I don't know, you might have left. And Julian saying the base movement is the same, 324. It looks exactly the same, Julian. And thank you again for sending in those shots. They really, really blew me away. I love the story more than anything else. It's just so funny. Really made me laugh. All right, next up, we've got Ashley. And Ashley sends in, wouldn't you know, Black Bay Blue. Now, funny, I didn't have the watch by the time you sent this to me, Ashley. So we both share the same watch this week. First and probably last time I'll be sharing with all of you guys. Blue shirt, thank you so much. $1.99, the infamous 6-letter word. Yeah, I don't know how I'm ever going to outlive that. But that was a time. Just remind me in future not to drink bourbon and do live shows, basically. I've been looking at the prices of these online, as you do, because I've been tempted and baited by Showcase to have a look at these watches. And it's insane how much they're going over retail. It's like an extra grand and a grand or more. Nuts. So the question is, you have to start asking, is it worth it? And I do believe in this case, not the aftermarket prices, but the standard retail prices, pretty good. I mean, it's in-house. It's all unique to the brand in a way. And have you heard that Oris just released a new in-house movement? That's insane. Can't wait to discuss that. I think I should do some kind of write-up there. That in a way puts them in contending with a brand like Tudor, which is crazy. I mean, the value of their pieces aren't going to decline so much, or should I say the new in-house movements in those models. Thank you so much, Clive. You kind of lost it there, though. Got broken up by Horror Mirror saying first time catching the show. Pleasure to have you. And everyone else who's joining who who I've missed. It's just wild. We've been running for 18 minutes already, and it's just going to continue. Ashley, thank you for sending this shot in. Not only the presentation, but the watch on the leather strap is also quite appealing. And, the opportunity to change out straps with this is special. So, yeah, it's a gem. Going to carry on through. We've seen a Black Bay already by yours truly. Okay, next we're going to Blaine. And Blaine, I love this. I didn't read, again, when I get over 100 submissions, I think there was about 140 images that I saved that I then had to trim back a little bit. I can't look at all of the images here. So if someone could explain this, Imperium Neptuni Regis, this is a certificate to Blaine, USS Boston. I would really like to know what this is about. If it's to do with sailing, if it's to do with diving, I really do not know. But yeah, so this is the Super Ocean Heritage on a mesh. We're going to have a look at quite a special Super Ocean Heritage later on, which I look forward to sharing with all of you. It's actually coming up in a moment. And the tags and the chat's going wild. You guys are going wild. Okay, Juan, thank you for the super chat, sir. Thank you so much. And Ashley, it took you 2 months waiting for the Tudor. It's unbelievable. You know, I mean, that's one thing that blew me away. It is what's crazy about the watch overall. Let me jump to another shot. Blaine actually wearing the Super Ocean, very underrated watch too in the line. What blows me away about it is that it is very I don't want to use the word basic, but it's built for purpose. I feel like it is very much built for purpose, and the hype factor surrounding it, it still hasn't wafted over me yet. I can't really understand it fully, but as far as an everyday wearing watch, what's dangerous in my case is when I can put a watch on and forget about it for 3-4 days, not take it off. That's when I start getting worried. I'm afraid this is what this piece has done. It just feels so integral. It's something that you really can just chop and change and use as a traditional tool watch. It's no longer a luxury. It's not considered a luxury item in the scheme of things compared to its sister company. It very much feels like Rolex prior to them going into the high flash factor. Could I add on top of it? Anyway, Juan, thank you so much for the super chat. And let's try and get to these comments. So Neil saying, what are Oris putting the new movements into? I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. As far as I know, I saw on social media that they were baiting a lot of people with the new movement coming out. And surprisingly, going in-house is a big step for any brand. Think about it for a moment. What could that mean in the future? Their value in general, like I said, the value of the watches with in-house movements are going to climb, as most of us probably know. Yeah, and Sam Ray, thank you. Geez, the comments are mad. Fortis has an in-house or at least a collab movement with their new Flieger GMT. Thank you for that, Moose Man. Dan says, would like to get you on our show at some point. For sure, Dan. Send me an email. I'm really enjoying collaborating in live shows if I have the time, if it's the right hour. A lot of the time, these live shows are going on at 3 in the morning, and I do like my sleep in the mornings, I have to say. Apologies. But yeah, I'd love to join in. I'd love to contribute and chat with everyone in the community. It just makes it more fun. And Mark, says the man who told Blue Shirt Buddha that he is currently drinking bourbon whilst doing another live show. It's going to be fun later. Yeah, no, wine for me today. That's it. Just a Merlot, very basic Merlot. Oris has come a long way. Raymond says, I agree. Clive, crossed the equator in a Navy ship. Is that it? Thank you for that, Clive. Goodness gracious. I don't know how I'm going to keep up with the chats. It's just going ballistic. Megan says it's superb. It is an awesome watch. I want to address it in a moment. Here we go. Boozer in Exile. No, I will not be using it. I thought that was quite a poor attempt at humor. We do actually have a few of those watches on the show this evening. And you'll be surprised. They are actually excellent pieces. Barrel in Blue, thank you for the super chat. Not sure if I've heard your thoughts on the AP Offshore. I have a 114060, a Speedy, a few others, but remain tempted by an Offshore. Am I nuts? It is very much off the beaten track next to a Submariner and a Speedy. It's a lot more of a concept watch in a way, I feel. Much more heavy duty. What can I say about the Offshore? I've handled one in the past, and compared to the standard AP line, you know, the Royal Oak in general, it does move into a different category altogether. It's a full-on heavy. I don't know. Can't find the right words, but you're not going nuts. I think it's important to experience these pieces if you can. Meetups are they make this whole experience so great. If you can find people in your area that are also into watches, highly recommend you ask around, because it changes the dynamic when you're able to have 15 watches on the table and you're all able to, you know, get wear time, actually get to borrow them if possible. Yeah, sorry guys, there's so many going on in the chats, and I'm Squale Ocean, Clive, very good. Offshore is like a Lamborghini SUV. It is the next echelon up from just the bog standard piece. But then I've been told that AP movements in general are very fragile. So putting it into a much more heavy duty, overbuilt piece is a bit peculiar. So I'd like to know more info about that. 121, I got all your pictures. Do not worry. Forbin saying, are AP Offshore lovers slightly more mature brothers of Hublot's garish children? Hublot does have merit in their designs, I think. I do enjoy the experimental prototype factor to their pieces. But overall, the Offshore had it first, and it did a lot of things too. I mean, it introduced like huge spot colors into many lines, things that other brands are adopting now. I did a video about diving chronos a couple of weeks, months back. It should be one of the most recent videos on the page, and discussed how the Offshore line in general, very outgoing, rubber straps, and it's almost like they set a trend that others have only started implementing now. Clive, you're on fire. What do I think of the Sea Dweller 43? It's awesome. I had a good few hours wearing it once at a meetup, and they nailed it. I would take the Cyclops off immediately. Overall, stunning. The questions are just going mad. I've got to talk about these watches, everyone. So, Super Ocean Heritage. The downside to this watch, you could see it as a positive and a negative in a way. It's not so much a functional diver in the purest sense. I mean, the diving bezel doesn't have any script on it, so it's not exactly that easy to use at a glance for the purposes of timing things. You just have to try and kind of understand the braille behind the bezel. But overall, the positive is that it is more classically inspired. It feels much more like a piece from the 1950s compared to models like what's another good example? I don't know, just going to say the Submariner, which looks like a piece that has transcended time a lot more in the development process. So yeah, fascinating. I look forward to sharing the next Super Ocean that we see in a moment. Okay, now we have to give Blue Shirt a bit of time for fame because he had a special week last week, I think it was. Last week. So most of you might not know. This is the most latest and most recent two-tone Rolex Submariner that was released. The 126613, I'm guessing. Taking a wild punt at this. What is not to like? Now, overall, the one area that I find a bit strange is the white printing on the dial. I don't know how good it is. I think Blue Shirt might need to cover that a bit more and express what it's like wearing the watch with the white text. It's probably barely noticeable, really. In a way, they had to differentiate themselves from the bog standard, the previous reference with the super case. But we all need to congratulate Blue Shirt for this because it is one hell of an achievement. What made it special to me, what really touched my heart, is that he got this watch before anyone else. He's the first person on this platform to have this particular model. And in order to do it, he traded in his Explorer 1 and his Explorer 2, Polar Dial 42 mil and 214270. And I love the story. I think it's fantastic. He's been yearning for this watch for 10 years, ladies and gents, 10 whole years. And he finally got it. Not just any Bluesy Submariner, but the most recent model with all the trimmings, the best movements, etc., etc. And he sent in some great shots a couple of days ago. Don't worry, there's a hero shot we'll see in a moment. This was on the day he got it, which is also spectacular because we can enjoy the watch as Bluesy Buddha, as he says, virginal, hasn't been scratched, which I aim to get Blue Shirt to do eventually. You need to scratch this watch. A clean clasp. This is something we never see in the wild, so it's pretty spectacular. You can see that it's absolutely mint. We still got a bit of plastic here. So yeah, I must say, I mean, wear it in good health, Blue Shirt. It is just gorgeous. And he did say this was the best shot for the show. I find it such a fascinating, what's the best word to explain it? It's not a watch that we associate to the Submariner, really. It's in a different category all by itself. It's a dress watch. It's a sports watch. It has 80s charm to it in many ways. It really does feel like a watch of its time. But even still, Rolex has kept this in its new lineup. It's not a watch that has dated compared to lots of others that have dated over time, like some of the Yachtmasters and other pieces. And I just find it incredible that this piece has been around for 20, 30, is it 40 years? I don't know, can't do the math. But it's incredible. And again, for Blue Shirt, they did make an adjustment to the dial of this watch. I think they made it slightly bluer. It's not as deep dark, if I remember right. But overall, I mean, let's try and get right in and have a good look. Yeah, it's great. I think the story about it is even more special than the watch itself. It's that journey of procurement, actually getting to that end goal. Now, yes, he does miss his Explorers, as he probably would. But I've said to him many times that you can always pick up an Explorer 1 again, 214270. Have that as your beta watch. But this one stays. And yeah, I think Blue Shirt deserves all the credit. It's amazing. Forbin saying, and I've missed so many of your chats, ladies and gents. I do apologize. It's probably how the show is going to be. Tag me again in the chat if you want to catch me. Forbin saying, would it be too un-Rolex if that new bluesy had its text and round indices as faux lume to match the golden accents? They've done something similar with the Milgauss in the past, right? With the white dial model, with the black dial with the green bezel. I don't think it's out of left field, but it would raise a few eyebrows, especially in the Submariner line in particular. And Nick Jones says, where did you purchase the OM bracelet for Smith Everest? Can you explain what OM means again? You mean as in the original oyster that I had for it? eBay, just eBay. Tell you, just scouring eBay and you find the most amazing things. That's the best way I could sum it up. I've had most of these bracelets for over 2 years at the moment, but I can tell you, it just takes a bit of tenacity. It takes time scrolling through pages, and you eventually find something that speaks to you. 20 millimeters, find a Jubilee if you can, just an aftermarket, and you'll enjoy the hell out of it. Speaking of Smiths, there's some interesting developments going on there. I might be in the process of designing a watch that's going to be released quite soon. Okay, carrying on next. Blue Shirt, congratulations again, sir. I'm going to congratulate you again tomorrow. Fantastic story. One of the best stories of the year, I think. To Brett next. Now, Brett, he might be watching the show, I think. He has reached out to me before, and he is the owner of Albany. Albany being a South African, if I'm not wrong, a Cape Town-based watch company, which is incredible. Micro brand that has done extremely well on Kickstarter. Now, I think he reached out to me like the beginning of this year, maybe end of last year, just when they were starting out. And since he knew I was from Cape Town, of course, there was a connection there. And questioning whether or not I should review a micro brand. Would that be something that would work on this page? Should we talk about it? What makes this piece special to me, especially, is of course, the background in Cape Town and that, the fact that it is a South African-made brand, which is very unique. There aren't any watch companies out of South Africa, really, if we were being realistic. But this having a mother-of-pearl dial, which is gorgeous. And when I look at this model, I think in our last email correspondence, it must have been months ago. I would imagine about a year ago, I said it just reminds me of the Blancpain bathyscaphe. It has that same kind of aesthetic, but it looks much better done with the accented quarters and simple features like the seconds hand looking like a spear, because spear fishing is a big deal, and all sorts of little factors. I'd imagine this is a stork, an African stork. I do not know the background to the brand very much. As it is, I'm preparing videos 3 weeks in advance, so it can be very difficult to keep up and in track. There have been many reviews of this watch already. I'll say that much. I think this comes in a black dial, blue dial, and then I like to say abalone or abalone, but I think it's more like a mother of pearl. Many channels have reviewed this already and spoken about it. I don't know what I could add to the table, actually. When there's like 5 separate reviews on a watch, it's difficult to of course I can't watch them because that'll manipulate my opinions. So yeah, it's difficult. But overall, I think Eric mentioned in the chat, good luck to them. Really, Brett, I do need to reply to your email. You sent it to me on Friday. If you are watching, I will reach out to you eventually. And Clive, you're having a good time there. Right, carrying on through. Brett, thanks for sending this in. Love the wrist shot. To Bruno. I must say that the selection of pieces that have come up now for the beginning of the show is spot on, phenomenal. Jumping to a Glycemin Airman. I don't know what you would call this, an albino Airman. I don't know what the size is. Hans is joining. Welcome, Hans. What is I would imagine it looks kind of looks 40-ish, 40 millimeter-ish. And overall, I mean, we know the story of the Airman and its history and all of those factors. It's such a peculiar watch. It draws me back because it's just, I love the story of it being a watch made for pilots, and many used them in Vietnam and all of that because they were affordable and rugged. BDev says 36 millimeter, #1 reissue. Thank you, BDev. It's what makes these shows great. I just love it, the extra insights. The roulette date window is fascinating, but just the clutter I find hilarious because when we think back, the originals were 35, as mentioned, 35, 36 mils. And you can imagine how difficult it must be to read the time when you're flying a helicopter or an airplane with all the rattling and the vibrations going on. It's virtually impossible to read a dial like this, especially a white on white setup. So yeah, I think what makes it unique is it has this Polar Explorer kind of aesthetic. Glycemin was the original establisher of this bezel, if I'm not wrong, and so many other brands stole it back in the day. These were very much the originators when it came to steel inserts, and it's just a gem. Open nines, I mean, serif on the 7, the 8's got a bit of a rounded element to it. Open 6s, really nice looking reissue. I don't know what the year is. Some of these watches I have just named not too well because got over 100 submissions. It can be a bit difficult with square eyes. And Megan's saying now Glycemin go up to 48. I believe so. They are huge. I mean, I wore a 42 mil with Curtis a couple of months back, and it's a fantastic size. 42. If you have pretty skinny wrists, 42 mils works like a dream. Wears extremely well. Okay, so BDev, you are Bruno. I gotta wake up here. Gorgeous looking Glycemin, right? Sam Ray is nice. Next up, micro brand, OW. Never heard of this brand before. OW Cobra. And I get Yema inspired elements on this piece, I think. Fully brushed case and bracelet, which I really like. And again, I must emphasize that I don't look at these pictures very much before, getting them prepared. So a lot of the time it's me just sitting down and looking at it with all of you for the first time. So I hope you're enjoying this. Dimitri says the 24 hours are always difficult to read, not only when you fly. It's a bit cluttered, gotta say. But then it is also charming in a way. A lot of the times I think what makes watches great is not their perfection. We really focus in on things that are perfect all the time. We see the final excellent end result. But a lot of the time it's nice to just kick back and say, you know what, I can't really make much sense of this, but that's the point. It takes me a little bit longer to read the time because why not? You can appreciate the peculiar spacing, and yeah, I do dig these. Got to say, that steel bezel with the locking mechanism on it, unique. Mentioning that this looks like a tag, it has a tag effect to it for sure. And there was, I think, Eric and BDev saying Oleg and Vaj, not a micro brand. Sorry, everyone. Eric Bell and BDev did not know that. Again, this is a brand I've never seen before. Used in professionals to series, Eric says. Gosh gracious. I do really enjoy the matte effect on the dial. It looks like the word matte has been translated through everything here. Please, can someone explain how to pronounce that Wajaz, Raymond? Be nice. Big up, JJ. So overall, matte is the word I would use to describe this. It's built for tactical purposes in a way. No reflective surfaces, aluminium bezels. I love aluminium bezels. I think there's just so much charm to them. It's nice having ceramic. It's great. But most of the time they are highly gloss coated. Having matte ceramic is also very nice. But aluminium just shows its character a little bit more. The crown looks pinchy to me, Forbin says. It looks like it stands out quite a bit. I do agree. Also really enjoy the case and bracelet. This is just like a typical 60s inspired case, late 60s, early 70s. It's very streamlined. It feels like a streamlined sub in many ways. Also, enjoy the pencil styled hands, something we don't see very often on watches like these. Looks something straight out of the 70s as well, as most of us know. Okay, carrying on through. Another few shots from Bruno. This is great. There's some excellent vintage watches that he sent in. Caravel. Now you can know why I like this. Batons and numerals on the dial. Open nines. And these names we're going to be looking at, there's a few. Caravel, Enikar, Ebel. All of these classic names that have disappeared, or some of them are being brought back to life, like Yema. It's incredible that you can find these for such great prices online today. And people just don't appreciate them for what they are. They all have pretty much the exact same movements. I would imagine they're all hand wound. They're all like 17 jewels. But here we go. We have basically like a precursor to an Explorer in a way. That aesthetic is just so timeless, no matter where you look. Open nines and sixes is also gorgeous. And the dial is fantastic, as Megan says. I agree. It's like a champagne effect. The tritium has been faded extremely well. Simple things. I mean, this watch that I'm helping Eddie at Time Factors design, serifs on your typefaces just changes the format completely. Same thing with the logo. You can do some gorgeous things with presenting a watch just by adding serifs and by adding a bit of cursive to the dial somewhere. Like automatic and cursive, waterproof with a thick capital serif. Yeah, you can do some amazing things. Overall, presentation is superb. Also love the lyre lugs to it. Love that 9 as, I just missed that comment. That's from Forbin. Open 9s and 6s are always a pleasure. It just adds that extra little bit of visual complexity to the piece. I would imagine this is 35, 36, 30. BDev says 33 mils, $30. Cost him $30. And next up, I mean, this is when it gets really unique. Here we go. So we have a Lucerne and a Chateau. Similar watches from the same time. I mean, you look at this, the case and the bezel, and I immediately see Oris 65. It is, it's amazing when you see the inspirations that came from these areas. And so many brands, I mean, you've got to remember that back in the day, everything was assembled from a parts bin, basically, So there was no rhyme or reason with any of this. It was just whatever seemed to work. Here we have 2 examples of divers from, I would imagine, mid to late 60s, and they've been lost to time. We've got a red bezel highlight. We've got a roulette date window. Lucerne Deluxe, anti-magnetic, gorgeous hands. I mean, look at that seconds hand there. I would imagine the bezel's probably PVD coated of some kind. They're gorgeous. They really are gorgeous. Huge crown. I mean, simple things that can make a watch sing a lot more. Crown size. Increase the crown size just to give it a bit more substance. And the Chateau, I mean, you look at the broad arrow hand and the Arabics at the quarters. There's so many watches that use this aesthetic. I can't name them off the top of my head, but I recognize this approach. I think Enquire did similar. You've got these gorgeous accentuated minute marks around it, another roulette window. I feel like this movement is probably exactly the same. 5 atmospheres tested. So what does that mean? 50 meters down. Yeah, charming, really charming. I think these are the only vintage inspired divers that we have on the show, actual vintage pieces of this kind of category. Plastic bezels, Julian says. It's amazing. I mean, look at this. I've just noticed this kind of reminds me of the original Milgauss bezel in a way. I can't remember. It's a 4-digit reference, like a 6542. No, it's not. 664 something. With it's just so cool. Could sit here talking about these watches for ages, and really, if any of you out there have pieces like these, please send them in, because I find them just to be so fascinating. Well, you can see the inspirations here a lot differently, and sadly, it's been lost to time. I mean, you don't see big names experimenting with these old styles anymore very much, which I find a shame, because there's so many appealing aspects to them. And Julian says JLC Polaris, Longines diver. Longines is a good example, yes, for sure. And as it is, I mean, it's great, just great, love it. Next up from Bruno, this is hold on, let's get to the watch. Octo, another brand I am not aware of. I think it's from around the 40s, if I remember right in the email. Forbin saying narrow bezel goodness, for sure. Lake Lucerne is over 200 meters deep. It's a bit of a fail when you're only diving, when it can only be taken down 50 meters. Nice straps on these, good NATO and rubber. Samurai, I agree. I mean, it's such a nice selection. Bruno really did outshine himself today with these pieces. Again, we've got quarters, we've got just gorgeous little hand wound, I would imagine. And having a look at the movement, I feel like this piece is from like the late 40s, 50s. Yeah, love them. I could sit talking about these classics for ages and ages, because I think it's so important to highlight where these inspirations came from and just what brands did back then that has been lost. I just spoke about typeface and using cursive and using bold, serifs and syringe hands and broad arrows. And it looks so quirky and peculiar, but that is what a lot of us are actually looking for today. There are a few brands that are coming back that are starting to experiment, but we need more. We need more of this to trickle back into modern pieces. They don't have to be vintage, solely vintage reissues. They can be modern that have all kinds. So Bruno, thank you for sending this in. I think you sent in another. This is a Seiko Solar, and you likened it to a Tag Carrera. I think this is one of your first watches that you got ages ago. Gorgeous. Yeah, what a cool selection of watches. As we've only been through B at this point, 44 minutes in, and we've just finished with B. So we've got a little bit to go still. Okay, next up, we're going to jump to Chris. Thank you again, Bruno. Before I start talking, I'm going to mute myself for a second and close a window because I'm freezing in here. The wind is howling outside. I'll be with you all in a second. Jumping to Chris, hitting the microphone on mute. I will also just add that Chris, the last time he sent in a submission, he is a part of the RAF, and he was working out that day, as in working outside, as you can tell by the weapon and the looks like he's got a hiking bag at the back there. And this is his PVD coated CWC quartz that he wears. And I mean, as far as a vintage, we can talk about vintage military issue watches in a second. I'm just going to mute myself. I'll be with you guys in a moment. I'm usually good when it comes to closing windows before shows, but you know, some things get past. I believe the Octo is a Frankenwatch, BDev says. Jeez. As it is, it sucks that I can't like get to the comments as I am presenting the pieces. It's so difficult to like keep track while also, yeah, you know how it is. The shows are always like this. It's always all over the show, all over the shop, but that's what makes them entertaining. So we're dealing here with an Enfield. I've never been able to remember the reference of this Enfield rifle that basically all branches of the British military use today. But the CWC quartz, we know the background to these. I'll actually link the watches of the British Armed Forces video in the corner of the screen for anyone who's new joining in. And the story behind how these watches developed, you know, the Mark 11 and then the W10 from Smiths and then from Hamilton, and then how it went to CWC eventually, and then we had Pulsar, and we had all kinds of other names that came in, Seikos, and this is a watch that's still being produced today. CWC does still make them, and this being a PVD coated, am I saying it right? Is it PLC, PVD? PVD, I'll say. Very stealth, to say the least. And quartz, I mean, again, you're dealing with watches here that need to be accurate for their purpose. If you are going to experience electromagnetic pulses, going to be in a bit of trouble, but that's beside the point. And everyone's giving me the rifle reference. It's an SA-80 Mark II, Eric Bell and Mark P. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I'm usually good with rifle references, but I've never been able to remember that. I know it's an Enfield. That's good enough. That's good enough. Chris, thank you for sending this in. I do love the context. The shot of the watch in context, in situ, is always nice. So going to jump next to Clint. Now, Clint is a South African expat living in Australia, and he's sent me Explorers in the past and an IWC engineer, I think. This time, he sends in a bit of a unique house, Dornbluth and Son. And I'm going to hit some more wine. Actually, no, water. Turn the water into wine. Be with you in a moment. The chats are going ballistic, ladies and gents, and I really do apologize that I'm not keeping up with all of you here. We're actually on good track at the moment because, as you can see, the selections there's a lot of submissions. We're gonna motor through. We'll get there eventually. Dornbluth and Son. Now we have a Lange and Zone coming up later, but it is a beautiful watch, and don't worry, you will see the movement in a second, which is also stunning. Very different to the normal pieces that Clint has, because most of the time we've seen him share sports watches in the past. If you have been following the show in recent months, more wine, Megan says, not a good idea. Really not a good idea. Won't beat the bourbon effect. Wine mellows me out, so it's quite dangerous. You know, the coffee keeps you going, the wine mellows you out, so it kind of balances. And we have up down, as mentioned. Finally, we're actually going to speak. I've made a video, just started preparing it. It's almost finished, on Lange and the 1815. A fantastic email came in asking me to look at the up down, the 1815 line in general, and it's the talking point. So, yeah, look forward to seeing that. I think Wednesday next week. Going to be a lot of fun. I really do love talking about brands outside of the trio of Rolex, Omega, Tudor, and then with all the psychology sessions going on in between, and you know how it is. Great watchmaking, as Demetrius says. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we have serifs on the numerals, and this is one of the talking points actually around the 1815 line is, do we appreciate cut-off numerals on the dials? Let's get some community feedback here. Everyone's saying cheers. Thank you, Blue Shirt. And Mark, I'm going to have my first glass. Oh, Mark, dangerous. At least you're not presenting anything, Mark. You can just sit back and enjoy. And I hope everyone else is kicking back and enjoying themselves and enjoying their Saturday or Sunday morning. Right. So I'd like to get the community's feedback on this. What do you feel about numerals that have been cut off on the dial? In some circumstances, they do work. I think in this situation, it does because it's shared equally. It's when you're dealing with two sets of numerals, like the 4 and the 8 that are cut off, and the 10 and 2 are left. When there's like an equal split between all of them, it feels a bit more correct for what it is. And then there's question of whether or not they should be removed completely. No, I don't like cut-off numerals, actually. I think you're not in the minority with that one. Most probably would agree too. What it does do is complete that negative space. There's lots of open space on the dial if you didn't have numerals there. So it's a catch-22 in many ways. And I feel like brands do struggle when coming up with a clear solution. You'll find what's amazing. In the 1815 talk, I go through from the beginning to, tourbillons and all the fancy complications. And you see that in between, the standard 1815 has a cutoff 6. The up-down has a cutoff 4 and 8. The perpetual has all of them cut off. But then some variants don't have numerals on the dials at all. I think the chronographs, we're talking about a Lange and Zona. So yeah, it should make a good talk. Really, it makes you think a bit more about the watch. That's what I try and introduce, if possible, an element to the piece that you maybe didn't think about in the first place. Got to say, I love the blued, what would we call them? King of spade style hands. 60-second track. It's gorgeous. But let's get to the movement because that's what makes this watch sing. Hand engraved. That is special. This is what makes these shows fun. I just curate. No one else knows. Look at the engraved balance. Oh, we've actually got the initials of the watchmaker here, VN, by the looks of things. It's just stunning. It really is gorgeous. Simple, typically German, but in general, it looks like Chris is actually joining us. It's fantastic. Welcome, Chris. I can see Eric is asking about his regiment. I don't know if you want to disclose that information, Chris. You might have to kill the person if you tell them. But overall, number 305, large main barrel, huge balance. I don't see any weight on the balance itself. But as far as watchmaking goes, it's always nice to just appreciate the simplicity. This is what Germans do the best. As little as possible, as little on display as possible, for the most part. They focus more on the strength and rigidity of their movements over presentation, but they still look beautiful. And as we move to the Lange at the end of the show, we see a bit of a different side of the story, I think. It's amazing. Raymond's saying, looks like a swan neck. It does. And that's this little gadget over here, right? I think that is the swan neck aspect. Yes, it is. If I remember, I've got to get back into my watchmaking tenses and verbs. Okay, some more questions. Sam Ray saying, it makes me a little mad when numerals are cut off. It seems to be an afterthought. I agree. And it's an aesthetic that has been used in watchmaking for years, hundreds of years. And in a way, it's almost like you think back to that time and you think, well, maybe these watchmakers want to stay with that traditional form and not deviate. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, you're looking at something that does balance the dial out a little bit more. At the same time, does look a bit janky. Doesn't look as well considered as it could be. I mean, yeah. But don't worry. We're going to talk about it in the 1815 video. They'll definitely be worth commenting about. Okay. A couple more questions about the number 305. How many jewels in that one, Sam Ray? I can count 4. So I'd imagine there's another set underneath, so maybe 8, 9, 10. Oh, God, I don't know. I'm going to go with 17. 17, I think, is a good number. It's probably around about it. I wonder what the power reserve is and stuff. This is great. Clint, thanks for sending this in. Really, your watches are normally sports pieces, and it's always cool just to see something a bit different. Texture on the dial and the quality there is stunning. You know what's funny? I didn't even ask you if you could hear me before the show began. So I hope you can. Next up, now I'm going to butcher your name, but Snermo with a C, Cnermo, sends me a wooden watch. Now, this is a brand that's been around since the 70s, and wooden watches have become very popular in the, I say, the non-watch circles. You know, the watch enthusiast circles where we talk about everything in between. I wouldn't say the wooden watch has caught on very much. This brand is called Tense. I don't know if it's a micro brand or if it can't be. It's a brand that's established. I think they focus solely on wooden pieces. And what's interesting in the industrial design circles, we talk about wooden watches a lot, actually, because it's a sustainable. It's not really sustainable, but it's a material that is easy to access. It's easy to work with your hands. You don't need tools. You can actually just use files and rasps and things to get it cut. So there's a couple of valid things. A lot of designers actually talk about making their own watches, and many do gravitate to the idea of using wood as the base material. Can you take it diving? BS. Very interesting to see what happens to the wood when you take it diving. If it's if it's been treated well, maybe not. Maybe, who knows? It's pretty cool. But overall, I mean, we've just had a look at some high-end horology pieces, micro brands, and now we're jumping to a wooden watch. I think this is the first one. And Baltimore says carve your own bezel option. At Baltimore Spirits, is this the piece you sent in? Sorry if it is or if it isn't. But I mean, there's lots of opportunity, and I guess there's always something special about wood and age. We talk about things like instruments, pianos and guitars, patinas very differently over time. Just try and keep it out of moisture as much as possible. Save yourself. Nice style, but a watch made out of wood. Yeah, Nick, it is definitely divisive. I look at it from the industrial designer's point of view, and lots of us talk about the whole idea of attacking a wooden watch because it's something a bit more personal. Most of us have woodwork experience, so it's something doable. It's not something that you need CNCs and everything in between, welding and the full spectrum. You can just do this by hand with a couple of tools, and charming, very charming. So Sonamo, I'm going to butcher your name again and again. Thank you so much for sending this in. I do enjoy the off the beaten track pieces a lot of the time. This is definitely a good example. Oh, cool. We jump into Curtis next. I don't know if Curtis is in the chat. Curtis being the commercial pilot from California that I met up a couple of months ago, with in the South Coast. And he has Rolexes and all sorts he shared with us. This was one of his first watches. I think he bought it in the 80s, Seiko pulse meter. And he bought one for his brother, I think, the story goes. And it's basically one of the first smartwatches of the 80s. Clive, that is just so vulgar. I love it. Thank you for that, Clive. You're always bringing the fire. And Megan, geez, Bourbon Fund. Thank you for the super chat, Megan. I'm definitely going to stay away from bourbon for a while. It doesn't agree with me, It does turn me into a different animal, one that just can't contain himself. And then Megan also said, nice NDC. I think it is an NDC trap. And Curtis is in the chat. I purchased 3 of these in Okinawa in 82. One for me and my brothers, 2 brothers. Lost mine in 83, and this was my brothers who gave up on it because it no longer worked. And then you had it repaired, you replaced a battery, and it just worked like a charm. So yeah, this is very much a smartwatch of the 80s. Got the pulse feature, everything in between. You've got dates and all the other details that you'd like. And yeah, Curtis loves watches that have a bit of utility behind them, I would say. The easiest. Okay, moving next. Curtis, thank you for this. We do have some more Black Bays. How interesting is this, seeing these side by side? From Daniel, he sends a Black Bay 58 and a Black Bay bronze, I think. And basically, you're dealing on the right-hand side with a 39, 40 mil. And on the left-hand side, we're dealing with 43 mil. It's quite a jump in size when you look at these two, eh? I really enjoy the Tropic strap. They're becoming so popular today, and I think it's well worth it. John, thank you for the super chat. I know you were very keen to get into the show, and it's fantastic having you here. Yeah, it's special. It's so special sharing these pieces with all of you. Clinton is in the chat. Well done. Dornblith has 20 joules, 50-hour power reserve, 18. I like that beat rate. 18,000. Nice and slow. That means the power reserve. I love the whole blend between a slower vibration per hour, meaning you have a longer power reserve. It also means that the movement is going to last a lot longer, and between service intervals, there's lots of factors, less friction overall. I think it's special, and I think Clive is going to make a good line there about friction that I just mentioned, and wood. Yeah, Clive, it's typically you. I love it. So olive drab on a Black Bay 58, really nice. Brings back those 60s vibes in many ways. And the bronze, I just can't get over the size differences between these two. We jump up to another shot, we see them. This looks like double wristing, I think. Is this him double wristing, or was this someone else with him? I don't know. But there's a huge separation between these two when it comes to sizes. Question you have to ask is, which has been addressed better in this situation? Sam Ray talking about paracord bracelets. Is a Cobra knot weave? We're talking about Curtis's bracelet. Jeez. Double fisting, as Clive says. Yeah, for sure. So the one criticism I have of the Black Bay so far, don't crucify me on this, but the wine is already getting to my brain. I find the case is a little bit thick for what it could be. I feel like they could taper the thickness of the case down just a smidge, maybe a millimeter, maybe two. It does feel a bit tall for what it is. That's just my 2 cents. And you can see the same thing on the 43 mil. I guess it's keeping with their aesthetic. And in many ways, the watch does seem to wear a little bit bigger than the diameter of the piece would suggest. That's what I've experienced with the blue model. But the black dial, I mean, the original gilt, is also quite vibrant because it has it. I guess it's truer to the original. What is it? The 6538 big crown, and the snowflake hands and the plots, the round plots, do get under my skin a little bit. I would love to see them bring out a snowflake dial for this sized watch. It would look spectacular. And then you're looking at the aesthetic of the bronze next to it with the 369. That typeface is brilliant. It's stunning. It looks like a 1016 kind of style from the right time period. It's clear that Tudor knows what it's doing when it comes to looking up inspirations. So in a way, I feel like they're trying to forge their own path, as you can see by the shield logo now on their dials. Unfortunately, most of us would probably like to see the rose there. I think it's a lot more, period correct and something important for the name. But you can also see that they are trying to cross-pollinate between the modern and the vintage aesthetic. The what's it called? The snowflake hand with the Submariner style dial. Yeah, it's fascinating. Definitely a lot to discuss about this brand. Value for money. There's very few that come close to this, I believe. There's a lot on offer here. I can tell you that much. Accuracy is superb. Yeah, I can talk about it for hours. Wood and bronze might cause rioting. Thanks for that, Forbin. Sam Ray saying, thank you so much for the super chat, man, from Austin, Texas. If I ever get the chance to travel out to the States again, if I ever get the chance to get on a plane again, I would love to come to America. I've got lots of friends in California, and hopping over to Texas wouldn't be, try and do like a stopping route, going to New York, going to Texas, going to Las Vegas maybe for a weekend, to Arizona, California, be a joy. Dear Artifact, welcome. Evening. I've been enjoying your inspection of the Explorer 39. Fingers crossed for a 36 and 41. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Really, I don't. There's just too much investment in the 39 mil size, and it's now, I really strongly believe, let's go back up to it. We haven't gone that far off. I strongly believe that 39 is either going to remain, or it's going to be bumped to 41. And like you actually mentioned, Tudor might then take the reins and introduce a Ranger with a similar aesthetic to this. We can only hope. It would be so nice, I think, for Tudor. We spoke about it. So you've basically written about 5 articles. Dear Artifact, if anyone is new to the page, check him out on Instagram because his photos are phenomenal. His write-ups are also really in-depth. These pieces are his bread and butter. He loves them to death. And he's written about 5 different articles on the Explorer and why he hopes Tudor gets a kick up the arse and gets into it and actually making the original Ranger again. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. I mean, really, there's so much to these brands. This company does know what it's doing. It's clear. This blue variant that I'm wearing tells you that much. But they could do a lot more. They have so many aces up their sleeves. So What the crown says, the shield follows. That was one of my lines from years ago. I said, and I think it holds true. The crown dictates and the shield follows suit in many ways. And I do think over time, as we see the Rolex watches getting bigger, most of the professional pieces, these are going to be the ones that you jump in to supplement if you do have a smaller wrist. It's sad in a way that the brand is kind of alienating their audience in some aspects and categories. When you look internationally at different wrist sizes of different cultures, not everyone can wear a 42 mil watch comfortably, and it's quite a pity when you've been lusting after something and it just doesn't fit you as well as you would like. Yeah, depth. When I start talking, it's full on verbal diarrhea. Have to stop in New York. I'd love to blue shirt. The last time I was in New York was 2000, year 2000. Ridiculous. Thanks, Clive. Better hurry. It's great. 369 on the Tudors. It's great. Yeah, I must say, aesthetics are stunning. Okay, I've got to move on. Daniel, thank you for these. Loved seeing them side by side. Really enjoyed seeing the size differences, for one. Everything's been scaled correctly here, though. We noticed the crown sizes, say. These are supposed to be big crowns, right? That's the whole inspiration. And you see that it's been used the same way on this. And there's a bit more attention to detail with some of these areas. Also find just simple things like chamfers on the sides of the case. It's just so much more alive. And that's what I think I'm lacking with the Explorer 39 that I've been wearing. Without the chamfers, it just feels a lot more manufactured, I would say. A bit of chamfer on it gives it that feeling of it being finished, added a little bit more of an extra touch to the style, the design. Okay, Daniel, thank you. We're moving next to Darren. Daytona time. Got a few of these coming up. This reference I really, really enjoy, really appreciate, and I'll say enough about it. That BS 2000. I was 6 years old. Yep, and I stood under the World Trade Center and everything. It was a time. Clive saying Tudor will make another Ranger, but it will be a limited edition, the Lone Ranger. Sorry if I'm laughing into the microphone. I really struggle to keep it away from my face. But yeah, I mean, it's true. Who knows? I find it very unfortunate that these watches are in, you have to wait months and months to get one. They are great for what they are, but they are also just standard sports pieces when you look at it at the end of the day. The demand is so high for them. I really feel so blessed to actually have a watch like this on the wrist and experiment with it. James, again, if you're watching, thank you. We're talking about businesses now, and I don't know what's going on. Okay, so this piece, we have a two-tone Daytona. The reference, I'm trying to remember, it's a 116503. They come with a white dial, they come with a black dial, and this gold dial as well. And the Daytona, to me, this is the one word I like using, is trophy. I feel like it is a trophy watch. It's the kind of watch you want to get given when you win a Grand Prix, when you win Daytona, Le Mans. There's just so much to it. And two-tone is gorgeous. I don't want to get too much into two-tone just because I'll probably sway a lot of people's opinions. But it's awesome. And brings back those thoughts of the 90s to me in many ways, the 80s and the 90s, and that's special. We've had a look. We're going to be seeing quite a lot of two-tones on the show, actually. Megan, don't say that. Don't say that in the chat, please. No one read that comment. I'm kind of hedging my bets and hoping that maybe in the next year, 2-3 years, I could maybe pick one up. But it's a long shot. 15 grand is something hard to separate yourself from. The next watch I buy, I need to have double the amount in my bank account. That's going to be the goal. So fingers crossed for me, ladies and gents. It's going to take a long time. Okay, Darren, you sent in this. And what I love next to this, we also have the CHNR again. Thought the lighting was just fantastic. The reflection there is superb. Seeing it in this light, you notice how well the rose gold works on a tanned skin. Naturally, it blends in so well with skin tones. And I made a video about this like 11 months ago, I think, saying that what makes this color so great is that it can work with virtually any color skin, which is something you can't say very much about lots of watches. The brown as it is, as a color, is so casual. It works with anything, any kind of occasion, any kind of clothing. Same as black. It's very versatile. Combining all of this together with a rose gold finish, it's subtle. And you can't really say much about modern sports Rolex and subtlety with a lot of these pieces. They generally are in your face, They're There's still debates going on about Tudor and explorers. Let's see. It's like looking like something out of Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, fully agree. Fully agree. Okay, let's get back into the chats. There's so much going on here, talking about explorers and references, and oh my goodness, 1947, 1965, 7-inch wrists. It's just nuts. Clive, you're on form as is always. And next up, oh, funny, I just realized we do have an explorer on the show. The last submission from Darren is the Explorer, the watch that did get a bit of anger out of a lot of people that I critiqued when it comes to presence and scale and proportion. And it took me 8 whole days of wearing the watch to finally look at it with a different set of eyes and say, yes, this is something pretty special. It's a gorgeous piece. It's funny, when I sum up this watch at the very end, there's a simple graph I'll be sharing with all of you that sums up my experience, and it'll make a lot of sense. If you know how wavelength looks on a graph, lambda and the y-axis and x-axis, very basic looking wavelength explanation. It's how it sums it up. Some days you look at it and think it's stunning. Other days you go, proportions are a bit weird. And I find it a common complaint amongst a lot of owners of this watch, especially those who have many different pieces in their collections. They feel similarly about the size and scale, that it's a watch you wear on occasion, not every day. But then, to each their own. We're all different. And now we're talking about explorers and James Bond, and Sam Ray saying, I really think Tudor would fit better for a modern 007 James Bond. Very good point. It's a very good point. It's almost, at this point, it's money talks, right? Omega's been involved with them since like 93, 95. So that partnership, I do find it special that they're actually able to manufacture their own watch for the films now. That's just happened since 2015. The new model is a bit much, a little bit heavy. The Spectre edition, I believe, is going to be one that is going to last the test of time and really become collectible. Hell, they're becoming collectible now. We do actually have a sample of it later on. I'll tell you, the watches that we're going to look at, as is, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy the pieces. And Megan says, I have this watch and it goes with anything. It really does. It is a perfect casual everyday piece, but it's also something that you could wear with suits and ties and formal occasions. It's still a watch that I'm debating. I've got it for another 2 weeks at least, and I hope to put 2 more videos together, not only discussing it compared to the Omega and the Tudor, but also by itself, closing thoughts, and really dig in, finally bringing in all the information and coming together with a 15-minute video to sum up the experience with the watch overall. Okay, another shot from Darren. Jeez, okay. Is this the same Darren? I think it is. And we've got our first Seamaster. We were just chatting about James Bond. Seamaster on rubber. And we have a few of these. I think we have a blue dial variant later on. There's just so much. The sports, I would say sports sums up the selection of watches that we're going to look at today, which is quite nice. We generally do see lots of sports pieces, and then in between, going to see some more unique models in there as well. But this is a whole topic in itself too. The sports watch has taken over the watch industry so much. I got an email, forgive me, I can't remember your name, but I have mentioned in the video, that's also been prepared, asking about why all brands don't use screw-down crowns. Such a good, simple question to ask. Why don't all watches use screw-down crowns? And you look at traditionalism and you look at how it all developed and why it was intended in the first place for waterproofness, and there's so many factors to it. Question is, are brands just stingy when it comes to making threaded crowns for their watches, or is there merit to them not having them? I guess you don't want to go diving with your 5196 Calatrava, but it's great. Darren, thank you for sending these in. You clearly are a sports guy. I got to say, an Explorer, a CHNR, and a Daytona. I also love that you have two-tone yellow, two-tone rose, and then a standard steel. It's a very nice 3 Rolex set. I really like it. I think it's gorgeous. And then the Seamaster, as far as just an everyday piece, I love what makes the rubber so nice with this watch in particular is that it's just so good for casual. As you can tell, yellow shorts, rocking it. You can wear this watch anywhere, and it's so versatile. You could call it a beta watch. You use and abuse, because these are bulletproof. The movements in these are incredible. Coaxials. Oof. I think it's the 8800 or the 8900. I'll never get it right. Okay, Next up, we're jumping to a Nomos, which is quite a change of pace from David. I think he was celebrating Oktoberfest, and he sent in the, I think this is the Nomos Club. No? Oops. No, come back. The wine is getting to my fingers now. Nomos Club, I think it's called, right? I think Megan asking who owns a 5196 is a couple. And we're going to actually see one later on. It's going to be featured on the show. I think it's a rose gold model, and it's beautiful. Foreman asking a question, how can 007 not use that superfluous escape valve as a special M-created weapon? Omega is missing a fun opportunity. How can Omega not use, how can 007 not use it? As far as I know, in every one of the films that watch is featured, the thing is used. I strongly believe in this new film that we're going to see that we're also going to find that adjustable wart is going to be used for timing an explosive or something daft. I don't know. And Raymond's saying that the movement is a Matas Kosk 8800. Did I guess that right? Crazy. Me and movements. And mentioning about Mark II's, Hans, there's nothing you can say against the Explorer. I definitely rubbed people the wrong way talking about pricing. It was just my 2 cents on the matter, but definitely not something that could be substantiated when you look at finishing and build and what you compare it next to. I think the Tudor next to the Rolex is so well competitively priced for what you're getting as an end result. Also, in-house, it's actually amazing what they've done as a brand over the last few years. Okay, let's get into the club. The Lambda is marvelous, Demetrius says. I haven't seen the new Lambda. Maybe I have. I do not know. And Tao saying the Swatch Q, already mentioned it in the stream. Pretty cool for quartz. The Swatch Q, it kind of looks like an Aquaterra in a way with those jagged teeth. I'm more interested in the Hodinkee edition Swatch. Oof. Having their name printed on the dial is a little bit tacky, I think. It's a little bit much. I think I should do some critique videos. Maybe we can have a critique live show next weekend or something. I feel kind of interested in doing that. But what else did the Q branch model have? It doesn't have a running seconds. See, if we were doing that kind of show, I could bring it up for all of us to look at. But yeah, as is, got to keep on track. So I think this is the Nomos Club. I do not know. Someone might need to tell me. But they've done some good things here. Like I really enjoy I think the Vacheron 56 with this typeface layout and the batons and everything there. Sub-seconds is great. And there's a couple of us in the chat. It is the club. Thank you, Tao. Well, Tao would know. He has one of these. And you use this as your beta watch as well. This is something you take to the beach. Tao, we know him as Tillman. He has a Lunga 1 and he has 4 pieces in his collection. And the club, I think, was gifted to him for graduation or something. I can't remember the story. But it's one of those versatile pieces. Also in-house movement. Nomos in a brand has quite a bad rap amongst people, which I find a bit strange because they do a hell of a lot for what they're working with when it comes to in-house and everything in between. This is the Ahoy. I have the Ahoy. Oh, God. Yeah, this is when I get lost. The Nomos Ahoy, the Nomos Club. I call this the Nomos College, right? It's the college edition. And you have the graduation. You have the frat house. You could do so much. I made a design for Nomos. And if they ever reach out to me again, I would love to be a part of your design department and come up with some funky, cool things for you guys to think about. Imagine having the Nomos College, the Nomos Frat House, the Nomos Graduation, and in there you can just go wild. Bauhaus wasn't always about restraint. It was also about being experimental and off the chains, off the rails. So I think well worth exploring there. David, thank you for this. Next up, we're jumping to Demetrius. This watch many might recognize. I did use it as a community post. It's probably one of the best non-wave ceramic Seamaster photos I've ever seen, without a doubt. It is so good. This photo just sums it up perfectly. Demetrius knows how to take good photos. From Greece, he was in the chat earlier. I think he's still here. How can you not like a photo like this? It's great. And funnily, I don't know if Ron the Shrink is watching, but he mentioned value for money. He's just picked up one of these as well. If you want good bang per buck, value for money, these are a good bet. $2,000, I would say, roundabout, less than $2,000. Ceramic bezel, coaxial movement. Small little touches about this watch that makes it quite unique. Non-wave dial, I guess, is a bit peculiar. Many wouldn't appreciate it, but applied Omega logo. You've got a date window that matches the color of the dial. The bracelet is also a bit divisive, a bit dated, but overall, I think just the highlights, the red accents and the James Bond hands, and yeah, it's a watch inspired by its time, but has survived the test of time too. Also think the size is good. 41 mils, great presence. It's a good workhorse, I truly believe. So I'll leave this on for a second. I'm missing you in the chats always. Clive is just chucking zingers left, right, and center, and I'm missing them all. The Nomos Oxley Stead High, that would be a winner. Imagine the special editions you could do. I know Omega does special editions per capital for London, for Paris. You could do the same thing for universities. Have the Stanford, have the Oxford, the Cambridge, and just do some crazy things with it. I mean, inspirations. It's what's fun about the creative industry is you really can go to town with creative aspects when dials are worked with and features and textures. Blaine asking, what do you think of the date window proportion? I think it works very well, actually. I really do. There's something that I just appreciate so much about a date window that matches the color of the dial. It's less in your face. It's less obtrusive. Questioning whether or not the rounded rectangle works and if it's needed at all probably isn't really. I guess it's there just to bring a bit more attention to it, but is it necessary? Would it work better without it there? If you had to include an extra one of these squares on the other side, would that complete the length of the baton? Would it have some kind of mirrored relationship there? There are many, this watch is divisive for sure. There are many features to it that lots of people don't appreciate. The wart, not exactly a wart here, it's actually quite a subtle crown. The skeleton hands, aspects to this watch that makes it unique, also makes it divisive in the community. So many don't really appreciate the Seamaster Professional because it is a little bit out there. Still feels like a watch from the 90s, but it's a good workhorse. James Con, critique show for the 10th to 31st Halloween. Name it Halloween H8 show. Halloween hate show. Got it. That's an idea. I found out that my birthday actually lands on Sunday, so we could do a birthday stream November 22nd. That could be a lot of fun. I don't know what would happen. And that's when the bourbon will be coming out, and that's when the show would get completely raucous. And Tao mentioning, has Nomos reached out to you again, or they say have they reached out to you in the past? Why did you say if they reach out again? Yeah, they did. So I did a Nomos video years ago, well over a year back, and I looked at the history of Bauhaus and all of that, and in the end designed a watch for them. And they reached out interested in the aesthetic, and it was strange. They reached out and asked about it. I gave them all the proposals, and they said we'll share it with the design department, and then a couple of days later they said we'll get back to you, we'll let you know, kind of thing. So yeah, companies have their own houses. They can be very difficult to deal with when it comes to outside input. Okay. Demetrius also sent in a Smith's Everest, this being the 39mm model. It's a watch I love. It's a watch I spruik to death because I wear it on all occasions for anything. And I'm designing a very special Smiths in the line. It's called the PRS 47. Came up with the name today, actually. Eddie and I have been chatting about. It's going to be very exciting to see what happens, that development. I look forward to sharing it with all of you. It's unique. And it's funny, there was talk about how people love the Smiths, appreciate the Smiths more than the Explorer because it's actually hard to find. Sorry for laughing into the mic. It's difficult to find because they disappear. I can tell you all about what it's like for Eddie at Time Factors when it comes to sales. The shop opens on a Sunday. He has 300 plus sales in 5 minutes. So it's quite overwhelming for him to manage by himself. But as you can imagine, the 39mm size has been well scaled here, and yeah, all sorts of factors. I speak about this all the time. I've got a show about it that just came out earlier this week, so I'm not going to talk about it now. Tal mentioning lots of hierarchies involved in the decision process. Yeah, I agree. It gets irritating when you feel like you have something to share. But, brands have their own agendas. They all go in their own directions. I find it quite amazing that the bigger names out there, Revolution, Hodinkee, other companies can actually collaborate with these large watch brands. It must be pretty special having your aesthetic, your design included, and how it works, how the synergy works between the two. It's also nice. So Dylan, 121 click bezel. I've seen you in the chat earlier. We're going to enjoy looking at some pieces of yours. This being one of your pride and joys, the Air King, which most of us would probably agree is going to be quite a sought after model once it's discontinued, because it is one of the most peculiar that they've ever made. Full stop. Air King being inspired by RAF, given to RAF pilots in the late 40s, early 50s, many with this kind of aesthetic. And this is where they try to get that Flieger element into their designs. Of course, this watch very much was the carryover from the 40mm Milgauss. We have the Mark I Explorer styled numerals on the dial, solid white gold. But then we think about that history and watch the Smiths and Explorer video, and we look at the aesthetics of those numerals. And it might be something quite unique to see that the Air King was one of quite an important watch in the development of this modern script. This script actually works very well on this piece. And the presentation is also cool. I think the inside the chilies or the peppers, I don't know what we would call them, all together, it looks really cool. It's such a peculiar watch. The missing the 0 on the 5 is one aspect that just makes me twitch. Jalapenos, I think, habaneros, maybe a Reaper down at the 6, Variant says. So we have the colors. We never see Rolex use colors on their dials, and it's almost like they had a dartboard of ideas and they just threw everything in and hoped that something would work. And hell, it looks good. We've got a lot of other shots here that we can share. This is a good example. It's very elegant for what it is, really, I think, for what it presents. And Triforce, good to have you here, sir. Saw you earlier in the chat. Just imagine if Rolex actually put some effort into the Air King. A unique, pure bloodhound dial with, 369, unique case. Milgauss case is one of the worst to use because it's so thick. I don't know if this watch has a Faraday cage. Kind of defeats the purpose of such a thick case if it doesn't have the added Faraday cage in it. This watch does deserve. I mean, we've just seen how the Oyster Perpetual got such an overhaul. I started writing a video about the Oyster Perpetual about 2 months ago, and 2 or 3 months ago. And when the Rolex releases happened and all the attention was driven to the Oyster Perpetual, I've had to change tact and rewrite it a bit differently, because it was all about the heritage of the Oyster Perpetual and why it's so important, why it deserves your attention. There really are so many factors to it that makes it such a quintessential in the Rolex line that people just don't even look at anymore, because professional is everything. And here's an example. The Air King has an amazing background and story. They've done so many iterations in the past, but they could do the same thing to this line that they've just done to the Oyster Perpetual. They could modify it in a few ways. I would actually love that kind of creative task, looking at the Air King especially. Excuse me. Aren't they Scotch bonnets? Megan asking. I really do not know. Me and peppers, I'm terrible with them. Like, you just need to give me something that is Tabasco I can handle, but that's about as far as it goes. The strong stuff really kills me. I've got bad genes when it comes to that. If you want to see me tearing up and sweating profusely, it's the way to do it. So we have a few loom shots we can enjoy. The one downside of the Air King is the loom is very lackluster. There's not very much to it. We've got loomed hands and a loomed triangle at the 12, which is also unique and just peculiar, because you expect to see loom everywhere. Highlighted aspects on all the plots, but nothing. I really feel like this was the dartboard watch in many ways. NATO, good having you here. And everyone else who's joining in. Again, I'm sorry that I'm missing you all. I can only really catch the comments that have my name tagged in them. Forbin Classer says, what do you think of the Air King's 369 numerals color with the others? You mean to say with the polished elements? Yeah, it's very weird. It is very, very weird. It's not something that, they could have. In one way, it's nice to see. Sorry, my wine fingers are working badly. In one way, it's nice to see white gold on the dial. I think that's special because there's no other white gold on the dial apart from the hands, right? But then if you wanted to make this a little bit more legible for its function, then having them painted in white would also serve the purpose a lot better. So it's difficult. And in offsetting lights, different light settings and zones, you can't read it as well as you would expect. And it's a bit difficult. It's a strange beast. But again, I have to emphasize, I think these are going to be highly sought after, because next to the Milgauss, which looks quite tame next to this piece, really, for what it is, the Milgauss is a very fun, funky watch in the line. This is just a clash of parts. And and the 5 scenario, everyone's commenting the 5. I know. It's one of the critiques I had of it ages and ages ago, and lots of people are very disgusted that I mentioned it, because now it just doesn't look right. And for anyone who maybe doesn't know what I'm talking about, every numeral has 2 numerals associated to it, 10, 20, 25. So the 5 not having anything there, it's period correct. It's actually traditionally, that's what they would do back in the day. But in this presentation and setup, it's a strange animal. Great video done by Watchfinder looking at the model that had 3 9s on the dial or something daft. Something was missed, and it's an error dial, and you know how important those are. So more shots from Dylan. Loom of his IWC. It's always good seeing a bit of loom. Pray for 5. Comments are good. You guys are great. And everyone who's joining, again, I have to say thank you so much for being here and for sending your watches in. We've just ticked over 90 minutes already. Good God. I've got a motor. How am I going to do this? Okay, I've got to speed up here. I'm talking way too much. So Dylan, IWC, Loom, a Longines. I don't know what this model is, but this very much was an RAF-inspired piece too. I should also mention that Dylan is a pilot, so he does like his pilot pieces, and these are all inspired by, 50s. We could easily say 50s and 60s era models. We're going long tonight. No, I'm gonna try and motor a little bit faster, because this is bad. We're still on D, and we've been running for an hour and a half. So this is really nice, by the way, really clean. You think of Longines in the 40s, and this, I would imagine this is like a 1945 kind of tribute model from that timeline. We're going to have a look at a very unique Longines later on, actually, that is from about the 80s, but it is a reissue, and also based on the pilot aesthetic. Gorgeous. Yeah, we're going to enjoy it. Also think the sword hands are a nice touch. All applied numerals on the dial. Would be great to see Longines go in-house again. Again, I think that story of Oris going in-house with their movements changes the game. Hopefully it'll kick a lot of other brands up the backside to attack it a bit more, because it just puts more value into the watches. It starts making them even more competitive next to others. We have a few of these professionals. We've just seen one earlier, but this slow exposure. I think what makes this such a charming shot actually is the speckling on the crystal. I think that just adds, it's very nice. It is very nice. And they do go the extra mile when it comes to looming the minute hand green and the bezel pip green. The one common complaint is that the bezel pip is very small and doesn't hold its charge long. This watch, I think, would have been done better if the whole bezel was loomed instead of just the pip, which I think they did address with the James Bond edition, with the faux patina everywhere around it, the faux loom. Yeah, great though. Really nice. Also, really enjoy that you get to see the wave effect on the dial. There's lots of visual complexity to these newer models. We're going to see a few more of them in a moment, so hang on. Thank you for these, Dylan. Jumping next to Edmund. Jeez, we're moving to E. I tell you, I don't know. I need some more energy, some more fuel, and I don't have any coffee here, so I'm going to have to really dig deep. So this is called a Hamilton Pan Europa. And this looks like a brand new model, but it looks very much inspired by late 60s and 70s elements. Really clean. I do like the simplicity of it all. This is one of the first 70s-ish looking models that we've actually featured on the show at this point, which is nuts. Very seldom do we go so long without featuring, the old school batons, the old school plots. Pan Europa. Don't know how I would pronounce that. Cushion case. We've got to really enjoy the rally strap. That's a nice detail. It's so cool when you see watches actually addressing those kinds of little factors that maybe people don't think about subliminally, like the green accents, as Megan says. It just adds another dynamic, also very casual for what it is. Does this bezel turn? I do not know. That's stunning. We're going to have a look at some cool vintage Hamiltons later on in the show. If Juan is still here in the chat, he sent in a gorgeous Intramatic that we will appreciate in a moment. Edmund, thank you for sending this in. I really do enjoy the black and green contrast here. I think we've just spoken about the Oyster Perpetual lines and everything there, but so many others have done it too. And this is a good example. I mean, this color could be used on any kind of watch to add that extra bit of punch. Great piece. Really is nice. Next, we're jumping to Eric Bell. I don't know if he's in the chat. I think I saw him earlier. But he sent in an Aragon that he loves using and a great setup in his studio. PRS, 100-watt Marshall. And this Aragon diver, now Eric Bell, for those of you who don't know, he dives with everything from Rolexes to Seikos, micro brands, Aragon as well. What makes this particular model unique, he loves the fact that they're oversized, but this also has tritium tubes. And you've got to enjoy tritium tubes. It's very nice. There's so few brands that are actually experimenting with tritium. I've got to say, there's just an extra little bit of uniqueness to. I mean, I just think of marathons immediately as pieces that have tritium used in most of their dials. Haven't thought of Aragon using tritium. Also, really just need to comment on the Marshall setup, the amp, call this a preamp? No, the cabinet. I've been out of the electric guitar game for a long time, but Marshall, one of the best. PRS, Paul Reed Smith, I think it's called. It's been a long time since I've been playing anything but Fender, so I do need to get back into it again. But really, it's nice seeing these watches on display. I think it's PVD coated. Really enjoy the features on the bezel. It's really nice. It's got that Yachtmaster aesthetic to it as well. Speaking about date complications, it's something that there was mention of in the chat about pros and cons. It's a peculiar thing. I definitely don't think it's for everyone. It's something we see, synonymous with Seikos most of the time. Basically, every Seiko complication has a date. So yeah, to each their own, their taste. I gotta say, I love tritium tubes and the highlighted name on the dials. Also, I mean, who looms their logo? Unique. Dig it. Special. Speaking of which, we're jumping to Seiko next. Eric Bell, I did see you for a moment. I don't know where you've gone. I think you've left us. Next up, we're jumping to Philippe. He didn't give me any references for these pieces, so I've just kind of winged it and called it a Seiko diver. There's going to be a few of these in the show. I struggle so much with Seiko references above and beyond everything else. Looks like it has a ceramic bezel. What do we call it? Is it an SK? It looks like a modified SKX, actually, the more I look at it. Mercedes, our minute hand. I guess he might have done the job himself. And he sent a few more. I think he sent in an Orient diver, which is nice. Really, for the price you're paying, good bang per buck. Get to appreciate the loom. I'm enjoying the loom shots. Gotta say, it adds another dynamic. I mean, if a brand like Orient can fully loom the bezel, why can't brands like Omega and Rolex? And there's so few of them that actually do. We find that micro brands especially are playing with looming their bezels, but these bigger names don't do it. Raises the question, why? What are they afraid of? It just changes the whole game, the wearing experience. And he also sent in what looks like to be, I don't know if it's a vintage or if it's a modern Junkers. I think it might be a modern piece. Now, this, again, we talk about the Bauhaus aesthetic. We were chatting about Nomos earlier. This being Max Bill designed this, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Definitely, I'm definitely not good in this area. But it is just pure 1930s, 1940s German simplicity with pencil hands and everything else. Russell's joining us. Fantastic. Russell, we get along very well in WhatsApp. He sent me a whole load of pieces and shots to share later on. Very interesting aspect about a Ulysses Nardin that he sent in. That's pretty funny. We'll see it at the very end. And Eric Bell saying class. Yeah, good to have you here, Eric. I'm sure you've been watching. Max Bill designed for Junghans. Thank you, Nick. So not only did he do the simple baton layout, but he also did the variant with the numerals on the dial, a little bit more expressed, right? Yeah, it's one line of pieces that it doesn't appeal to me very much, which is odd because the industrial designer in me says, yes, it's the epitome of simplicity and it's gorgeous in that way. But my rationale is always saying there's so much more diversity out there from so many other brands and watchmakers from the past that having a stamp of approval from someone's name on a watch doesn't immediately make it great. It's that catch 22. We look at the Genta pieces and you could say, yes, they are pretty unique, but very hyped at the same time. But they did start a whole new movement, and yeah, it's as it is. We keep talking, keep talking. Philippe also sent in a Seiko Presage. I think it's a Presage or Cocktail Time. No, I really don't know. Megan saying that we should do wrist shot week only with loom shots. I wonder how long people would stay around just to look at loom shots. Not a bad idea. I do prefer the idea of mixing and matching. It's cool to see baby Grand Seiko Boozer. Oh, that's it. Okay, so this is almost the precursor to the next step once you jump in to Grand Seiko. Funny, Marcello, if you're in the chat, you sent in the base level Grand Seiko, and this. Oh, it's great. They look almost exactly the same. Feriana just sent you. Great. You just sent me 2 loom shots. Awesome. Okay, well, feel like there are going to be lots of them coming in. But yeah, next show we'll have is in 2 weeks, so I'm sure we'll enjoy it. So Joshua was saying, anyone else have a one-watch collection or just me? So Joshua, I'm going to jump next to, should I jump next to Megan's pieces? Let's do it. Right. So we're jumping from Seikos and everything else like we do. It's a mishmash of bits and pieces. Jumping to a Bulgari Octo Finissimo. This is probably one of the most gorgeous in the line. And these next 3 pieces that we're going to have a look at, I cherry-picked because I think they work very well with the subject that we're looking at today. And they're all very unique, special in this space. So one-watch collection, technically, the word collection denotes more than one, if I'm not wrong. I don't think collection lines up with one. But owning one watch is special at the same time, I think. One watch lets you put all the memories into it. And it's a companion in that sense. When you have 5, when you diversify, you do lose quite a bit in that zone, in that category. The intimacy. Speaking of which, next week, I've got a video all about this topic, actually. An owner wanted a Submariner for over almost 20 years, 18 years. New old stock, he bought it. And now he can't get himself to wear the piece, even though he's been lusting after it. And throughout this time, over 20 years, he's built a collection behind this watch. And it's that whole thing of, what do you do? We as watch people do develop our tastes, no doubt. So let's get into this. I mean, I think it's a titanium. I believe it's a titanium, and they've done some amazing things with this. I've criticized the design of this watch. I find it, Cruising Gypsy says, unilection, kind of like that word. So the Octo Finissimo is very much deco inspired, and lots of people compare it to models like the Royal Oaks and the integrated cases and bracelets. I like to use the word fashion watch in quotations, not the general term of fashion watch like the Daniel Wellingtons and all that garbage. I'm talking more like in the sense of, you go to Milan Fashion Week and this is the kind of watch you would see people wearing because it's just so out there, avant-garde. You know what I mean? And again, Bulgari, we know as a brand, when it comes to making their movements, they've always been one of, if not the most incredible when it comes to making micro thin movements, ultra thins. And I think they still make the thinnest movement. I'm pretty sure they do. There's some incredible, every year they try and bring out something else. No exception here. Extremely thin case presence. But then it even goes further when you look at how the deployment works in this watch and how the strap has been channeled out for the deployment to fit. And it's special. It does add a lot of, I do appreciate that people are getting drawn into this watch a lot more, even though it's brand spanking new on the scene. But there are elements to it that I just find so strange. I mean, looking at the lugs to me, there's just too much going on, too many facets, you know. We talk about Octo Finissimo. If you look inside, you find the 8 corners inside the dial with a rounded accent around the top of it. They do mention the Chrysler building as a piece of inspiration. Very 1980s, Forbin. Yeah, I agree. It is very much like a 1980s inspired watch. Does the dial work as well as it could? I don't know. The offsetting of the sub-seconds, I do appreciate. I find it nice. But it's still a piece that I'm on the fence with. I do like using the word fashion watch, though. It does feel like the Milan Fashion Week piece. Okay, next up, we are jumping to a Moser. I think this is the only Moser we're going to have on the show. But the Fume dial, I mean, how can you not love a Fume? And Moser does it better than most. How did that work? Moser does it better than most. So we have a tobacco sunburst effect here. And we know that Moser as a brand is relatively new in this sense. They've just bought the company, the current owners bought the company like in 2012, I think. And they're just starting out fresh with, I like to say, modern organic approach to how they address their cases. They all have this very similar fluid form factor to the cases. That's then translated to the hands. We call them leaf style hands. The beautiful script. I mean, you cannot get over how, I'm pretty sure this is how they originally did it back in the day, but it's special. I think it's great. And Moser in general, they've got their own design identity, their own language at this point, and they're still experimenting with things. They're never satisfied. Too many brands rest on their laurels when they get to a certain point. Moser being one that's still developing, is still trying to get themselves out there. They have the ability to now manipulate steel sports. They're trying to address them in a different way. And yeah, there's so much to learn from brands that are enjoying the space. I also love it that they give the middle finger to a lot of other brands when it comes to their spoof pieces. And yeah, nice, very nice. And then the last watch that we're going to have a look at from Megan is the Chapek. I can never get it right. Vendome Tourbillon. Now, this is a brand that was mentioned to me I would say about 6 or 7, 8 months ago. Gotta say, it is beautiful. Tourbillon, power reserve, small dial. I mean, I do really like the power reserve here. I mean, Zapek I hope I'm saying that right. It is pronounced, is it Chapek? Tippy, thank you. The colors set up, just everything about it, the gray accents, it's beautiful for what it is. But it also is very much, what I like is the split between extremely traditional with these old school like lancet styled hands, with the high Gothic Roman numerals, and then you suddenly jump to a full inset tourbillon, very high polished elements to it. It makes it look like a much more hardcore, what would we say, developmental piece. Oops, come back. There's so much to talk about when it comes to these watches in general. I mean, I could sit here for hours trying to unpack them. I would love to experience them. I would imagine it's about 42 mils, I think. Yeah. There's so many more of these to come in future, so I'll be sure to highlight them, but it is unique, very special to see these pieces on the show. Just adds another factor in, and dynamism. Bulgari, is that right? Chapek and Moser. So Megan, thank you for sending this in. Gorgeous. And the winner is, Eric Bell says, oof. If it was me, I would probably take the Moser, I think. I love the subtlety of the Moser and what they've been able to do. I really do appreciate an underdog in many ways. I think an underdog brand, like they are, high horology, still are high horology. They're doing such a good job. Just have a look at their pieces. If you get a chance, you'll find it fascinating how the modern organic nature has been used in all of their watches. So yeah, Megan, thank you for sending these in. Funnily enough, we're jumping back to another Rolex next, and a Meteorite GMT, one of the most sought after GMTs out there. And yeah, so this comes in from Frank. I need to hit some water. My mouth is drying up. I've been talking nonstop for 107 minutes. How do I do it? I can tell you in real life, I don't talk this much. It's almost like I try and combat dead air by just talking and more talking. So I loved looking at those pieces again. Loved seeing those classically inspired motifs. And everyone in the chat, I hope you appreciated them too. They are very unique and special. It's nice seeing just diversity. It's what makes these shows fantastic. Right, so next, the Meteorite GMT. Now, Frank in his email said to me, every one of these watches have a nickname assigned to them. If the Pepsi, this and that. And he's wondering whether Captain America should be the nickname for this. Guessing red, white, and blue. Pan Am. The whole story behind this watch, by the way, is that it's basically inspired by a very unique, the Pussy Galore variant of the original GMT, the Bakelite, came with a very unique white dial for Pan Am specifically, made in very small numbers. And this kind of harkens back to that in a way. Now, the comment that many make is that they prefer the blue dial. I personally prefer the blue dial variant than the meteorite, but this is one of only a few models that has ever been incorporated with a meteorite dial before. So, as it is unique, special, the meteorite makes it look like a fingerprint on the dial, which I think is great. You won't see another piece that has the same kind of lacerations around it. Also, notice how the bezel works. I don't know the age of this watch, but if this is a transition between the Mark I and the Mark II bezel, there's a clear distinction when we look at the modern GMT, the Pepsi, and how it arrived. Yeah, so it's definitely a divisive watch overall, but it is also quite the statement. I do think the white dial, the whole story behind Pan Am and everything there is cool. And Megan's saying the winner is the Moser for you. Yeah, they are. I think the brand is just going from strength to strength. I would love to invest all my money into Moser pieces. I think they just are. When it comes to design and understanding the restraint and simplicity, Dimitri's saying from Moser and Zapek to Rolex. Sorry, but for me, horology is the winner, not Rolex. Dimitri's, that's another point. And finally, we're going to be jumping to a nice selection of sports watches coming up next. I mean, the criticism I've heard about Rolex in the past, just listening to watchmakers, they do mention that they're disappointed in a brand like Rolex because they aren't exactly contributing to watchmaking very much. Hear me out. Over the last 100 years, they haven't exactly pushed the envelope very far next to many other brands. Okay, I'm just going to use Omega as an example with incorporating the coaxial. Companies expanding their lines with fancy calibers and everything else. I guess the Sky Dweller was a good introduction of a new caliber, but as it is, I can understand their complaints, watchmakers in general. And then it's the hype factor and everything. We can talk about that at a later stage. Thank you for this, Frank. I think this will be one of the only times we'll see a meteorite GMT on the show. Also need to shout out that you're wearing it on your right wrist, which is something that we never see. Gotta say, it's a gorgeous model, and I want to know your opinions when it comes to digging crowns into your wrists and how it feels, what it's like. Yeah, stunner. Next up, we're jumping to George. Now, George sent in. Oh, gotta say, I don't like calling it the Batgirl. I still call it the Batman. He sent in a great selection of pieces, some of the best I think in this highlight. Sunray's back saying, Sam Ray, sorry, saying, I am also working a night shift while listening. Hope you're enjoying it. Just throw on the headphones and listen to my voice, put you to sleep. Not a bad idea. Good call. So, as Nick says, cool shot. It is a great looking shot. And here we get to appreciate how nice this bezel is on this watch. I've been asked so many times in many emails about buying my first Rolex and what it should be. This is one that I would jump on if given the opportunity, because not only do you get the more dressiness of the Jubilee bracelet, which is something that I really wanted the first Batman model to be brought out with. I think that just completes it. It makes it so much more dynamic. But then you have the black-blue bezel. Use of color to indicate its function, its purpose. Let me try and, I've mentioned this for most of you who are, should I say, veterans of these shows. I've said it about 60 times, but I'll say it again. The blue indicating the day sky, black indicating the night sky. From 6 p.m. to 6 in the morning, 6 in the morning to 6 p.m. It's such a brilliant use of color. And it's probably one of the most standout uses of color that I've seen Rolex incorporate into any of their designs in recent years, I think. It's functional. For a professional watch, it's a functional aspect. Unique. Great. So this is what he mentioned. He says the perfect long-haul watch when it comes to traveling. Good call. Next up, we jump to a very unique, I think it's Save the Ocean Commitment, 50 fathoms. And he sent in a few of these shots. Let's see, do I have any more? So this is what he mentions as the perfect watch, I think, in his write-up. Yeah, his email. He basically labeled every watch under a certain theme. So this being a perfect watch, Save the Ocean, I mean, when it comes to heritage, the 50 fathoms is special. It is very special. Being the ocean commitment model too, meaning a lot of the money that goes in the sale goes to charity, which is fantastic. Let's try, there was another shot here. Let's get back to it again. Looks like We've got a hound sitting in the background there. We love our dogs with our watches. It's always very special. And overall, really do enjoy the restraint that this model has. I think it's a 40 millimeter piece. I think it is a 40 mil piece. And because of that, everything looks pretty relevant overall. Nice watch, but I'm not looking for a commitment. Clive says, that's fantastic. You're always there. How do you do it? I don't know how you manage to get it out every single time. It's just nail on the head. Really enjoy the explosive blue effect on the dial too. This is very much military inspired Blancpain. This is back in the day when it was first started. So I like those aspects. 40 millimeters is also great. I'd imagine this watch visually looks bigger on the wrist. So that's fantastic. So Blancpain, he says, the perfect watch. I think it's a great diver. It has an awesome amount of history. Professional watch. What is that exactly? Yeah, good point. I mean, that's a video in itself, Gary. Good point. Next up, Breitling Super Ocean. He calls the perfect beach or holiday watch. And this is, let me try and get this right. It's the 57, and it was brought out recently for the what's been going on in the world. I don't like mentioning it, but it's a relief for the relief fund, I think. And they call it the crayon dial and stuff. It's just the colors are fun. James mentions. I agree. I think it is pretty cool. There's a couple of aspects that I find peculiar, which I'll mention now. Just throwing in my first fisherman's friend. I get by with a little help from fisherman's friend. If anyone's in marketing, I've got a great idea of how you could push the brand, like the McDonald's slogan and everything. Can definitely collaborate. If anyone represents fisherman's friend watching the show, reach out to me. So there's another shot here, I think, of it on the wrist. And I mean, this was going to be, if you follow me on Instagram, this was the main shot for the post for this evening's show. And I think it's just funny. It's fascinating. A rainbow. There's lots of talk about the rainbow watch. I mean, the rainbow Daytonas and rainbow Datejusts and other models. What Breitling is doing, they've definitely changed their attack when it comes to their brand identity in many ways. Many in-house movements now, I think, collaborating with Tudor. They're also digging back into the roots. I didn't even realize that they've brought out the 57. This is very much inspired by the original 1957 Super Oceans with the funky quarters and the big arrow hand. No typeface on the bezel. The dish of the bezel actually slopes inwards. And the crayon effect, of course, being special edition. These are being sought after now, too. The Goldberg. I think Mark Goldberg has one of these, right? Yeah. Fisherman's friend. Yeah, simply the best. Got to say. I go live with a little help from Fisherman's Friend. So it's fabulous, Clive says. Yeah, it's fabulous. It is. I mean, I guess in a way you could mention Pride, very much so. And I think it's all the better for it. It makes it even more special in that way. I speak about fun with watches all the time, and it's for that reason. We've got to have fun. It's all nice, all well and good having perfection when it comes to sterility and function and everything you want in a package. But then next to it, it's good to have some juxtaposition and something you can throw on for the beach, like he mentions in this. Jelly babies and yeah, Crayola. I think it's pretty cool. Next shot he sends in. The perfect ski watch, he says. I think it's hard to argue. I didn't even know that we had a polar dial. How cool is that? The perfect ski watch. I mean, that is the perfect watch for snow. Hard to argue. I don't even need to hold on to that for very long. Fisherman's Friend and Divers, great combo. BDev says, yeah, I agree. I really agree. Sorry that I'm missing your comments. I do flit in and out, struggling to catch them half the time. Again, tag me in the chat and I'll see it a lot easier. But yeah, hope the presentation's good. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. And then also from George, he says, the next watch that's coming up, JLC Reverso, the perfect dress or watch in Europe, European break, he mentions, as in traveling, spending your time in Europe. Reverso, this being the blue dial variant. Oh, it's just stunning. I love one of my requirements whenever you submit a reverso is to send in both sides, even if it is a standard polished back. Gotta say, it's gorgeous. And just all the texture on it and everything else, the presentation's fantastic. This is what I love. When we see a collection that is summed up with a few shots, and in this case for George, highlighting the aspects of the watch that makes them great when it comes to his collection. The perfect dress watch, the perfect ski watch, perfect watch in general for traveling, for tripping around Europe. Yeah, like it. I like the little extra bit of substance to it, all in all. And that's it on the wrist. God, I love that texture on the dial. The Reverso is always a watch that is going to pique my fascination. There's too much to it. Tippy's saying the Rolex actually almost got the revolutionary constant escapement, but they backed out of it in the end. Jared Perigo continued it. And it's insane how these brands are really doing a good job when it comes to evolving these kinds of technologies. And others are just resting on what they can do very well. It's funny. I mean, you see a lot of brands that are focusing more on the marketing, and others, like JLC, focusing more on what most of us appreciate, which is the watchmaking, expanding. Would you imagine that in the 1930s that they would eventually go so far to have so many complications, a watch that literally can have two faces, two separate complications, 2, 3, 4, we're talking, like all of these added details on such a basic, small instrument. Timeless. Oh, it's gorgeous. Just stunning. So thank you for these, George. Loved seeing your collection. It's always a pleasure. Next up, we're jumping to Graham with a Zinn. Oh, God. It's a 104, 103 with Buddy, the Border Terrier, sitting in the background. It's awesome. I think it's the 103. I always struggle between, no, the 103 is the chronograph. The 104 is the standard aviator piece, right? With the mesh bracelet as well, this very hardcore looking built. I mean, typically German in a way. That presentation is just, yeah, it's nice. We always speak about contrast, as Clive likes to say, and here's a good example of pure contrast. German simplicity. From a distance, you look at it and you think, nah, it's okay, it's not bad. But then you jump in and get really close and you can see the minutes, all of those added details accentuated. We'd had a look at the Glycemin M earlier. This being a watch built for a pilot, you can see the appeal. 104, good. Countdown bezels for the win, Neferion. Very, very, very good. And it's something that lots of people don't know much about, actually. Countdown bezels were the OGs. They started the whole trend back in the day. And there's very few pieces out there that actually have them. So, yeah, it's stunning. I think countdown bezels are really unique, and you can use them both ways. You know, you can do the maths, determining between 10 and 50, or 10 and it's pretty simple to work in the situation. So you can use it in both circumstances, whether you're timing something, if you're going for a walk and timing a 40-minute walk, or if you just want to time the walk in general, you don't know the set time. You've got a bit more options there. Okay, Graham, thank you for sending this in. Also love the presentation. It's good to see Buddy having a good look. Yeah, God, we love our dogs, gotta say. Oh my, this next shot that's coming up is one of the best of the show. Honestly, it is one of the best of the show for obvious reason. James, with a GMT 16713, taking a photograph of a fresco in Venice. This is like just so, I mean, you can see he's a photographist, right? He's a photographist. There he is, James. This is one of the best shots of the show. You sent this in, like, I would imagine maybe 5 hours ago. I saw this and thought, yes, I have to save it. Even though it was, I had like 140 submissions. This is just cool. What is not to like about this watch, this setup? If you want to market yourself, you come to my page and you want to market yourself as a photographer for Wrist Shot Week. This is how you do it. You win. This is cover photo kind of stuff. Only thing is, I normally just feature the wrists, but if we have any other photographers out there, this is the way to do it, man. Really, James, hats off to you. I don't know if you're based in Venice or if you're just traveling through, but I can imagine it's been quite a time being able to see a lot of sites without lots of people in the way. So yeah, just amazing. And the watch, two-tone, the GMT, I mean, this is real. This is the classic in so many ways. The blue variants that we see, the two-tone blues, are a little bit heavy. This is something that really rides under the radar. Stunning. Based in London, James, I think we need to connect. I really want to connect. And if you have some more great pieces, please share them with us, because this is a win. So congratulations. This is by far, I would say, one of the top 5 shots of the show, just because of its uniqueness. I think it's superb. So thank you. Really creative, awesome. We've got another James coming up next, and he sends in a Monta Ocean King. Monta watches. Monta is a micro brand. I think it is a micro brand. And when it comes to social media, they are very much the social media darling. People are talking about them all the time. I mean, they really are workhorses. It's a brand that is coming out of nowhere from strength to strength. They're now they've become mainstream in many ways. You see that with a few brands, and it's something that is quite surprising. I honestly think when you compare it to the big names out there, when a micro brand is able to get a following of like 100,000 people, you're doing something right. And definitely don't want to go down the routes of fashion watches in the sense of Daniel Wellingtons and those. These are actual watches when we break it down. As far as a tool and a sports watch, got applied logos. And one thing you have to appreciate is that in the creative process, when it comes to creating a new watch, it is so difficult to find inspiration because everything has been done already. So you have to question how do you attack it your own way, a unique way. Dan saying spruik it. I'm definitely spruiking it, right? No, I've never been just full disclaimer, I've never been contacted by Monta. This is just me trying to attack the I know they're very popular, so I thought, how do you attack it your own way as a brand? How will you be able to make your own stance? And there are a few out there that are doing such a good job of it. I don't know what all of this means. I don't know what the Calatrava-esque cross is on the dial, but all in all, as far as sports watches go, nice integrated bracelet there, hollow end link, even though it's probably solid. Yeah, we've seen a few of these on the show in the past, but no date, as mentioned by BDev. I agree. Yeah, I mean, some are really appreciating no date watches, and there's a lot to love. Next up, Marcello says, I'm considering to design and produce a watch for my senior final project. That's a lot of work. Count me in. If you'd like some help, count me in. If you'd like another set of eyes, share it with me. We can feature it on the show and get some more perspectives. That's actually, we talk about user feedback. Let's jump to the next watch. James, thank you for sending this in. I think this is the only Monta we'll be looking at. Next from Jeb, we get to see another new Submariner. Marcello, we know a lot about user feedback and how that all works in the process. I'm sure when it comes to your research and development, you have to interview people and get perspectives. This is the perfect opportunity. You can cite me, source me, do whatever you like. And I'd love to share your designs on the page. I think it's, especially for watches in general, I can post it on the community page maybe and get some perspectives there. We could maybe make a poll for people to vote on. I'd love to do it. I'm in the process of helping design a watch now, and it's so much fun. So go with it. Just remember, the lecturers are going to ride you crazily when it comes to a final project and asking whether or not it's worthwhile, and stick true to your roots and your guns. Anyway, I want to talk about this and I maybe talk more about design. So the new Summit with a C, not with a K. And it's an interesting beast. It's one I've criticized already as it was released, because I just felt like the watch lost a little bit of its pizzazz with the Hulk dial. That emerald dial was something that really made it gorgeous. Eric Bell saying 1,000 feet equals 304 meters. Exactly. That's great. I mean, that's true. And Eric Bell is a diver. He's been to 500 meters and back, ladies and gents. The new Kermit or the Shrek, Megan says, yeah, I do like Kermit. In a way, it feels a bit more, it leads in a lot better to the standard Kermit. You just add a C on top of it. Juan's saying, I like it. Yeah, there's lots of factors. I mean, this watch in different lights plays. The green bezel is the one feature that I've always critiqued because I find it just to be too bright. But maybe they are actually improving it. To be saying Starbucks. Jamie saying Shrek, and then there was another one, the Green Lantern. I also thought was great. The Green Lantern is cool because I mean we have the Hulk, the Batman, the Superman, and not a bad idea. The Green Lantern kind of has a good ring to it. Maybe we can make it a thing. But yeah, black dial, simplicity. I must say, I mean, we critique the size and the scale. This watch has barely been increased at all when it comes to sizes. And from 40.2 to 40.5, I think, in diameter, it got bumped to. The lug width and everything else to 21. For what it is, it feels so much more integrated. One of the critiques I have of the 39mm Explorer is that they should widen the braces a little bit, just to make it look more like there's some presence there. I would love to try on one of these, honestly. I've tried on super cases before. Hoping to get a few to review. Actually, there's some eager gents who'd like to send some in. So I'm all down for that. I'd love to review a 6-digit super case. But comparing it to the next generation, the 1-2 models, would also be very nice. Especially a no-date Submariner, I think. Russell, who's in the chat, he's ordered one, and he doesn't believe he'll get it by December. That's where the demand is at the moment. So demand, hype, everything else. Jeb, you've scored big time, so I can't imagine what these must go on the grey market for at the moment. But hang on to it, enjoy it as you are, kicking back. It's great. Love the presentation. And yeah, these shows just bring up all kinds of surprises, and I think it's always special. And next up, we're jumping to a completely different model, different watch, Baltic. I've mentioned Baltic a few times. This was almost the cover photo, Jeremy, just to let you know. This was right wrist. I feel so proud. This was almost featured as the cover because it's a gorgeous photo. Doesn't matter what the watch is. If the photo is fantastic, if it's presented well, if we have some sleeve, bit of dynamism, some good lighting. So this, I think this was made, he mentioned Weekend Warrior. Is it called the Weekender, or I don't know. And if everyone mentioning I like the salmon dial, yeah. So I made a video all about salmon dials and featured Baltic in the selection. Baltic's also a micro brand. And as far as sector dials go, it's a subject, I mean, it's a theme. Sector dials were very much 40s inspired, 30s and 40s. Look at that Open 6, that Serif 7 again, Open 9. There's lots of features to these watches that I think, especially in the sector dial area. Imagine brands like Omega and Rolex bringing out sectors. They would make a killing because that brushed accent on the track just completes it. It just adds a whole new dynamic. You've got this pole router-esque divide line that runs through it. It's very true to form of those originals. I think the most memorable is from JLC. They have a whole sector series. They are beautiful. And if everyone says, I bought my salmon dial Zelos because of that video. Yeah, I mean, salmon dials are charming, gotta say. There was mentioning about Rolexes in the chat. Surprisingly, don't normally see that. Tippy saying, I heard Rolex is going to erase the waiting list and make all watches available. So have I. That's the latest rumor. Yep. They've decided, no, freedom for all. We're going to go full on socialist, give watches to everyone. I mean, that would be amazing, really. I mean, if you want to combat gray market, that's what you do. It's such a strange position to be in as a brand, really. You think of Omega, on the other hand. You go into the store, you can pick up the watch, no problem. It's yours. Take it home. You can get it delivered to your door if you want. Rolex, you have to play all these games. You have to hope and pray. You have to become best friends with your AD and take them out for dinner and everything. I guess it adds to the reward in the end. You know, when you achieve it, do we have something to pull up? Yes, we can. Jeremy, thank you for the shot. I love the texture too. It's a fantastic photograph. The watch is also stunning. Micro brands making headway. Okay, let's pull up a Rolex just so I can talk a bit more about them. This is Jimmy, 777 pilot, and flying over the Atlantic in the shot, he says, and this is a U serial GMT Pepsi. I think it's one of the only Pepsis that we have in the vintage area. No, we do have a few more. So what was I saying? Rolex as a brand, the whole game of buttering up your ADs and becoming a good friend and everything else. In the end, when it comes to actually receiving the watch, it must be pretty special because it feels like it's earned. But hell, I mean, you go into any kind of car dealership. I know Porsche is doing the same thing now, so I've heard. But you go into a car dealership and they say, yes, you can have the M4 or the M2 or the SUV, but you first need to buy up all of these diesel models, 3 of these before you can buy that. You just walk out the room, and they kind of chance their arm with this area. The question is, like the Roman Empire, will it one day collapse? That's a good point. Maybe that can be the topic of a video, the subject model. Like the Roman Empire, will Rolex see its demise because of its mistreatment of its citizens? I love it. Love when we get philosophical here. So yeah, the new serial and Eric Bell says 97, 98. I think it is. I'm terrible with references. It's a tritium dial. It's a Holes case, non-solid end link, so it does feel kind of late 90s here, I would imagine. Got to say, I love the faded bezel. It's pretty gorgeous. And vintage Rolex is just, it's got a whole different area of charm to it. Sam Ray asking, speaking of Porsche, what do you think of Porsche design watches? There's some damn good ones. Look at the Ocean 2000. I did a video about that. The IWC Ocean 2000 collaboration with Porsche Design. Absolutely brilliant. Proper specialist, spasmatic, 1980s inspired, beautiful. They've done a few good ones. I should do a few videos on that too. Next from Jimmy is a Kermit outside enjoying the sun. How is that we've just looked at the modern Kermit? Now we have the original. Sorry, I need to take some breaths. I'm going to pass out here. I'm going blue. I think I'm running out of oxygen in the room. So this is a D serial Kermit. I don't know what that means. Someone help me. The bezel looks like a light shade of green and not a dark olive. Does that mean that it is the more modern variant of it? It's a solid bracelet, no holes case. I don't know if that means anything. Now, we're talking about bezel colors and everything else here. Did a pretty good job with this, I reckon. Kermit meet Kermit. Isn't it amazing? I mean, I don't rig this. This is quite literally what is sent to me, and a lot of you feel like you're in sync. It's 2008. Thank you for this, Brandon. Yeah, and there's something about flat fours and everything else, or flat fives, and this doesn't have a flat four, so whatever that means. And these watches were made until 2008. This doesn't have an engraved rehort. Does that also mean something? Megan's saying that I think the economy is changing the high-end models of Porsche. They're no longer selling. So if you want one, they will roll out red carpet for you now. And that's the thing, economy changing. I mean, that can also impact. It's funny that it hasn't impacted the watch industry at all, really. It's, if anything, it's almost improved it because people are trying to find areas to put their money in, I guess. And in other ways, it's just such a good distraction. As we're doing right now, it's a great distraction talking about these things. William, welcome. Great to have you, sir. Subarus have flat fours, Nefarian, they sure do. So do Beetles. I love them. Flat four engines. If you've ever worked on a flat four, you know they're just incredible tanks. So Marcello now mentions, I'm actually reading the comments for once. Rolex needs to bring out a no-date color Submariner. It's crazy that they only, yeah, true. I mean, look at I came up with some concepts of a navy bezel and others. Yeah, lots. There's another sample that he sent in from, this is also from Jimmy, a Explorer in Maastricht. I'm going to butcher that name. Maastricht. Someone please help me. But we have a Polar Explorer again. Can you believe? I didn't think we had any, but we have a few. And they're all, I don't think we have one 6-digit reference Explorer in the Mark II, in the 2 series. Only 5-digit references. This is just such a sleeper watch even now, which I think is pretty amazing. And the demand for these are now climbing, as most of us probably know. Solid end links. I don't know if he gave me the reference to it, but as far as a sleeper goes, I always think 1990s and tennis when I see this watch. Excuse me. Presentation is just there. Another great 16570. Yeah. No date for purists. Oh, I tell you, when it comes to dates and no dates and the Cyclops lens and what we think about it, and there's all sorts of divisive elements. I don't think we have a sea dweller on the show. All of these models have dates, as far as I know. Beautiful example, 73 Map says. And he also sent one last shot. A Tag Heuer Formula One enquire.idguy. I think this was his first watch that he bought. So Jimmy has interesting taste. Gotta say, these three Rolexes he sent in: Explorer 2, GMT U serial, and a Kermit, and then a Tag Heuer Formula One to cap it off. To really sing it. Enquire.idguys are getting really popular too because they're just unique in a sense. Yeah, again, if you would like to get my attention, tag me in the chat. I struggle with reading all these to see. Josh is saying, talking about Rolex is as common as talking about That guy. Very boring after the first 30 seconds. It's funny. So what else do we have? So Jimmy, thanks for sending these in. I really do enjoy the selection. Explorer 2, GMT, and Kermit. Pretty nice. One thing that I find a bit bothersome about these kinds of pieces, all in all, is that they all share the same dial. And this is when in this video that's coming out next week, we talk about the Explorer 2 next to the Submariner, and why I think the Submariner deserves to keep the dial the way it is. Where the Explorers and the GMTs, they are in a bit of a different category, I think, overall. Anyway, Jimmy, thank you for these. We're jumping to John next with the Seamaster. Oof, what a good shot. I think this was in the rain or after the rain. So, Jamie, thank you so much for the super chat, really. Jeez. And all these comments going on, it's great. I love it. Chat is fantastic. Megan says, no impact on horology yet, but it will impact the industry eventually. Yeah. A good example, blown his watch budget for the year at home stay. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everyone is spending on these pieces, and it's funny how it's been manipulated in a way. People are buying watches as escapism, and in a sense, it's a different category altogether. Formula One, having a look at, and yeah, everyone else who's joining, I've missed you all. Again, the chat has just been going ballistic, but don't worry, we're going to keep motoring. We've got a few pieces left. We've been running now for how long? Almost 2.5 hours. I don't know how I do it, ladies and gents. I don't know. Seamaster 300, black on black ceramic with raindrops on the dial. Looks fantastic. It really does. The Ferion says, what percentage of Seamaster owners actually use the helium valve? I would say 0.000052, maybe. That's just a wild guess. I might be close. Triforce. Rolex has traditionally rolled out the basic black dial and saved the special ones for their anniversaries, their PM. They took out the green Hulk dial, and I'm sure they'll bring it back in PM. PM is in, I mean, as an anniversary, primary model. I don't know what PM stands for. I guess you mean to say anniversary in a way, though. I agree. It's funny, though, that it almost, I like to say, I don't like to say, it's something that I've heard, that people feel kind of cheapened by the fact that the Hulk now doesn't have that dial. The Cermet doesn't have the dial anymore. But then different strokes. I mean, lots of people love the Kermit and find that the Hulk is too toyish. In a way, it's too green. So, yeah, as is. Next up. So, John, thank you for the Seamaster. This is probably one of the best shots of the professional for the show. And let's jump to a very, very, very cool model. So, I think Clive is going to love this one. Oof, it's gorgeous. Now, he needs help. John needs help here. This is a Zenith pilot from the 50s or 60s. He doesn't know anything about the reference and needs some help with it. If anyone knows when this was made. Carl is joining us. Fantastic. And everyone else, so good to have you all here. PM as in precious metal. Thank you, Triforce. I'm slow. Bunt strap. It's stunning. I think it is just superb. What do you guys think? 50, I think it's a 35mm model. And again, he questions what year this watch was actually produced. It feels like early 1950s to me in a way, just after the Second World War, I think, when they were starting to push out watches for pilots. Tritium hands, you've got the syringe hands. That's quite a telltale sign, actually. The syringe hands kind of give it away that it's an early 50s. What's the crown at the 54? Are we 73 MAF? Are we talking about the Seamaster? I think most of us know. It's for aesthetic purposes. I mean, it's got no function to it, really. Helium release valve, helium escape. I call it a helium release valve, not escape valve. It's basically, it was always used as the gimmick in all the James Bond films, and it's a part of the watch's aesthetic at this point. And you're mentioning, I can tell you most Omega owners end up breaking the wart off by accident. Wow, I did not know that. How do you manage to do that? It's on the wrong side of your wrist. I mean, it's not exposed to anything. I mean, these are huge, though. They really have bumped the size up quite a lot. The whole watch has been scaled. I like to know the owner's thoughts around the helium valve. Again, it's an aesthetic to the watch, like the James Bond skeleton hands and everything in between. It is just, But overall, this the Zenith 50s is quite special. And I think he also sent in the shot of the case back. And this is when I started scratching my head, actually. Now, this watch is from the 1950s, right? But the case back on this looks brand spanking new. This looks like something we would see produced today. And I kind of started thinking if this is not just another case back that's been put on this watch or not. I really don't know. Eric Bell's saying 58. Is that the case? Could that be the case? Is that to do with a reference number or Stotzaker? I don't know what any of this means, but yeah, this case back looks so modern. It's crazy. And the dial and everything. I mean, I really thought this was a reissue when it was sent in. I had no idea. But it is in fact a vintage piece, and it looks in such good condition for what it is. Tuxedo black, love the two-tone colors, beautiful. On a bunt strap, just completes it. 73 math, kidding. Good, great. See, I can't read sarcasm, as I'm sure most of you know. It's difficult to read sarcasm without a laughing face or a grin or a, give me some rope here, ladies and gents. Yeah, moving on next. Thank you, John, for these. It depends on which wrist you wear it. Okay, so me wearing it on my right wrist would probably, I'd probably break the crown then at an off angle. Okay, next to Juan. Now, Juan is generally always in the chat, and he contributes greatly with the pieces that he sends in. So we are going to enjoy some vintage, some modern, have a good time. So we start with his grandfather's Eternomatic golfer watch. Now, his grandfather never golfed a day in his life, but he had this. And that's a good way to start, I guess, right? Nick mentioning that the helium escape valve is to Omega what the Cyclops is to Rolex. Now, very good point. And like it or not, neither will disappear. Part of the brand identity. It is. It's an aesthetic that has been, it's something that is ingrained into the DNA of the watch. Fully agree. There are a few models out there that have removed them, though. Am I wrong? The 2254, I think not the GMT version of the 2254 model in the Seamaster line did get rid of it, though. So there are some exceptions you can find out there. But yeah, as is. 2254 is an amazing Seamaster, by the way. Look up the reference. Stunning. So yeah, the golfer watch that he never played golf with. The case back, we get to appreciate vintage Eternomatic. I can't imagine the age of this, probably like 50s, 60s-ish. But as Juan is always sending in these gorgeous shots, we get to appreciate. He is primarily a Hamilton and what am I saying now? Hamilton and drawn a blank. He collects everything. Bolivar, Hamilton, those are the two. And when it comes to vintage, the originals. But then he also loves to dabble in different areas, as we will see in a moment. So yeah, stunning, very unique. Got to say, I enjoy the cross hatching on the case itself, so you can actually hold it easier. That's why Breguet uses coin edging on their cases. Just a small bit of information, which is pretty cool. That's become a part of their aesthetic, but it was actually brought about because of function. They needed it to be easy to grip, and they nailed it. So yeah, amazing. Next up, we're jumping to an Explorer. Surprise, surprise. Quelle surprise, another Explorer. This being the black dial variant. I think he mentioned something about ADs and sending it in to get polished. I can't remember the story. But it's got loom. It's loomed up very nicely. And yeah, we're going to see a few of these. I think we've seen quite enough of them already on the show, but it's just fantastic. Honestly, I don't rig these. We're now seeing lots of Explorer 2s all of a sudden. And all of you in the chat, ETA is short for Eterna. Eric Bell, very good point. And speaking of ETA, at the very end of the show, we're going to be looking at a watch, a high-end horology watch that uses an ETA-based caliber for its crazy complication that was modified. So that should be a lot of fun to discuss at the very end. Triforce saying, a manual helium escape valve is absurd to me, considering you could just unscrew the crown anyway, let the helium escape. It's just a gimmick there for James Bond's gadgets in the 90s. As far as I know, there was a patent around the whole idea of a valve, the integrated valve like the sea dwellers use. And a lot of companies couldn't use that technology because of that case. Maybe that was something going on in the 90s, and that's why Omega used a crown instead for that adjustment. That could just be me guessing. No idea. Okay, so yeah, we've seen enough of these pieces, but next up, are we ready for this? Classic Hamilton Intramatic. And This is quite a charming piece in the line. The way I worded when I did a discussion around the Hamilton line in general, this model actually, the reissues, it feels so much like this piece in particular from about 1968 set the foundation. It kind of started the movement for so many other brands that we've seen now in the micro brand space that are looking at the pure simplicity of a watch like this, the presentation of two subdials, symmetrical pencil hands. I think the brand Dan Henry pretty much uses the exact aesthetic of this in their styles. And Hamilton has just re-brought these watches out, but this is an original from back in the day, as you can tell by the tritium and the crazy numerals on the date. And if I jump to the movement, it's just stunning. It's just utility, you know? It's the reference 644 I see on here, 17 jewels, unadjusted. Don't know what that means. So they didn't actually, did they not set it in any positions, I guess. But as far as it's not a movement to be seen, it's not a movement to be looked at. Dan Henry, 1964, Raymond. Yeah, that's it. That's it. This movement's not to be seen. And in a little while, I would say in the next maybe half an hour or so, 45 minutes, we're going to have a look at a chronograph movement that is built to be seen. And here you can see there's no finishing, there's zero finishing, no striping, nothing. It's just built for utility. Big balance, says Nefarion, and yeah, it's a huge balance spring. It's pretty cool. It's nice. This is when it's almost like the VW Beetle of watchmaking in a way, because here we can appreciate just how simple everything can be done effectively. And you break down to where all the parts are. This is actually the perfect kind of watch to study if you're going to watchmaking school, in a way, because you can just enjoy how everything works. So basically, it's just bog standard, built for purpose, easy to disassemble, to reassemble, and I guess that's why these movements have stood the test of time so long. It's great. So the Intramatic, there's a few comments. Oh, geez, and what's coming up next? You're going to love this. Just talking about reverse panda aesthetics. Watch what we're going to see. Ashley saying, would they stamp unadjusted on them to avoid import duty? I have no idea. Someone who knows things about watches, please ask or tell Ashley. Stamping unadjusted, does that affect import duty? I really don't know when it comes to regulation. The common foul, you missed it. You made it. Welcome. Good to have you here. 7:30 a.m. in Singapore. How you guys do it, I don't know. But yeah, we still got lots to do. There's still some amazing watches coming up. There's some micro brands. We have some high-end pieces. We've got some Patek Philippe's in a moment, and some Langers in the end, and Eberhard, and oh, it's so good. You're going to see a lot in a moment. Blaine, I know it's long past, but the certificate underneath the heritage too commemorates my metamorphosis from a lowly polywog to respectable shellback. Oh, that's so funny. This happened whilst our submarine was circumnavigating the globe. Blaine, thank you so much for the super chat first, and your super ocean. Just for that, I'm going to go back up and find it because it's deserved to be looked at again. Blaine and super ocean. It's such a cool looking certificate as well. This was way into the beginning of the show, but yeah, mesh bracelets. How can you not enjoy it? 1950s inspirations. Now I've got to try and find where I was. Juan and the Hamilton Intramatic. Doing pretty good. The wine has finally hit the brain. It's mellowed me down. Yeah, the show's been great. I've really enjoyed the variety, and we're not done yet. There's so much still coming. Lots of hierology as well as little bits and pieces in between. Joshua's leaving us. It's a pleasure having you here. Can't you keep your eyes open anymore? I have that effect on people. Don't worry, you're not the only one. It's 12:30 in the UK. I was yawning at 9 o'clock, so double coffee did it for me. I have that effect on people. Where does this guy come from? Okay, so Juan, thank you for the Hamilton. Now we're jumping to a Panda Daytona. Why not? We've seen two tones. We've seen all sorts under the sun. We've basically seen every professional Rolex model, I think. Pretty much GMTs, Submariners, on all accounts, ceramics and aluminium bezels. Now we jump to one of the primary hype watches of the world, which is the 116-500 LN. And this watch was released in about 2015. No, I got hands-on time just when this piece was released. Back in the day when you could go into an AD and actually get some hands-on time with a watch, I was able to try this on very early on back in the day when I was flat broke and just had time on my hands to go into Harrods and ask. Doesn't happen anymore. Looking back now at this piece after that time and taking the hype, avoiding the hype and the stupid prices that these are going for, what do you think overall? Is it worth what it is? Steel sports watch. You have to admit that the complication, a column wheel automatic complication, is something very difficult to do. Got to agree. But overall, ceramic steel, you can wear this watch every day, for anything, to anything. The whole discussion around screw down crowns. There are very few brands out there. I think Rolex is one of a handful that were experimenting with screw down crowns with their watches very early on. So that is quite something. They've kept that all the way through. They have established a lot of things over the years. And we talk about the panda aesthetic and everything else, the whole idea of the subdials being pushed up and not actually fully centered with the new Rolex movement in it. And yeah, there's lots of quirks and complaints. We have a few viewers of this channel who have bought this watch and subsequently sold it because it just wasn't something that sang to them. And it's that catch-22 again. You lust after I mean, this is just the perfect shot, Juan. You've got the light glinting off it. It's angelic. It's just beautiful. There's a choir in the background singing. And, you know, you buy this watch and you think gray market immediately comes to mind. But it's just a steel sports watch at the end of the day, you know, and it's difficult. Very difficult to get your head around. So I see, Jesus, some great comments. Josh was saying, I'm in Norwich. I've been up since 5 a.m., nearly 20 hours. Insane. Don't know how you do it. I mean, I was up at 9 today, so really well done. 5 in the morning. Good Lord, on a Saturday. And James, thank you for the super chat. I'm going to send my watch pics for the next video for sure. My email is in the description of this video. And by all means, I curate as much as possible. There were some submissions that I didn't save before the show began because there was 140 of them saved already. So they will be carried over to the next show if they aren't featured here, as is the case. We try our best. Ron the Shrink, fantastic to have you here, sir. I mentioned you a few times actually in the show. Rajiv saying, I love my Daytonas. They are special. They are. I mean, I say trophy watch. I think there is some validity to that in a way. But then you look at the history and you compare it to watches like the Speedmaster is probably the closest competitor next to this. And where do they lie? The Speedmaster was kind of abandoned as a racing watch, became the space watch, and that made the history. This went into the whole fashion segment. Italian collectors and fashionistas picked this up, and Paul Newman, and so it goes. Yeah, the Daytona. The Daytona. Thank you for this, Juan. Going into a completely different setting, going to Patek Philippe. The 5196R Calatrava. Say what you like. This is a bloody stunning watch. It is stunning. I really, really enjoy looking at this watch. And it's the simplicity is there, but then there's also so much detail to the dial, to the complexity, you know, the hobnail everywhere around it. Every single minute mark has been applied. That's something you don't see from any brand, really. I think JLC does a few, but this is one of the only watches out there that actually goes that extra effort, that extra length. JLC is better, Jai says. I mean, we're talking about the ultra thin. There's some gorgeous models in that line. The Master Ultra Thin, 41 mils. It's a beautiful watch. Something very appealing. There's just something about this to me that I find fascinating. The one element that I always am drawn back to, not so much the detailing, but just whenever I see the hands on the dial, no matter what position they're in, contrasting with the subdial there. It's also peculiar that it has a leaf-styled hand. It's one aesthetic that they've kept for some reason, which I find peculiar. I always find it interesting to go back to look at because of where the hands are placed. I always feel like there's a great stance. I mean, there's substance to it, you know? There's another shot he sent in low light. You see what I mean? I think it's just the length of the hands. They seem just so... I love it. I really, really like this piece. And I'm not a dress watch person. I'm not. But the aesthetic of this watch, the facets on all of the batons and everything, there's a lot. Nick, no, he didn't. He has a yellow gold, if I remember right. This is rose gold, 18 karat. Yes, Sam Raiders. They're about 15 grand, I think. It's quite a lot of money. It's quite a lot to swallow. But hell's bells, it's a stunning watch. It really is. I would totally own this piece if I had the chance. Really, Juan, it's a gem. It really is a gem. But we're not finished because we also get to enjoy a deployant. Now, there's a few viewers of the page. Russell, if he's still in the chat, he only buys, when it comes to buying a dress watch with a leather strap, he only buys them on deployants. And I think it's very important. It's almost like an essential, I believe, in a way, because the deployant just adds more substance to the wearing experience. It also means that when you're taking it off, you don't have to worry about it falling off your lap or something stupid. It's just integral that way. It's a lot more enjoyable, I find. And then the clasp closed. This is what I also think is special, is that it consists of the Calatrava cross, which is, we go back to Crusader times, and we have the Maltese cross and many others. Calatrava cross was an order. It was a Templar order, I think. It was some Crusader group. And how that works then with the whole Calatrava aesthetic. You get to enjoy everything about this watch. Question: wouldn't it be nice to see that cross in here somewhere? Or would that ruin the aesthetic? No, I think it would ruin it, actually. It's gorgeous. I find, I mean, this watch was made in and around the 30s, right? This was the original reference, 96, was made in the 1930s, I believe. And it's almost exactly like this model. And in that time, we're looking at Deco, we're looking at Bauhaus influences and inspirations. This watch saved the brand, if I'm not wrong. This is the piece that really completed it, and it's one of their classics. It's the one there. And Ron's saying, I still rather have an entry-level Saxonia. And this is where our opinions differ. I think it's great because I just find the Saxonia way too plain for what it is. If it was me with that kind of money, I would probably go 1815. That's what the video is going to be about on Wednesday. I'm going to discuss the 1815 line, why I think it's Lange's gold standard. They're just beautiful. You can find I think you can actually buy an 1815 up down for the same price as this, about 15 grand. 15 grand. Holy cow. I mean, that is just ridiculous, you know? Gorgeous shots though, Juan, as always. Megan's saying all dress watches should be on deployment. Yeah, I agree. It just adds more substance. You're dealing with gold here, so you've got some weight to it. And there's mention about Breguet, a Prega Breguet. My favorite, 5.1, what's the reference? 5.2, something. It's the retrograde seconds. There's some gorgeous examples of Breguets I would jump onto. Stunning. But then we're not done yet. We've got a Reverso just jumping up. I think he only sent in the one. He sent in a few random shots that I've just jumped in and thrown together. Standard Reverso. Again, this is a dual time, I think. We have featured this before. And then the final, the money shot, we could say, is Vacheron overseas on the bracelets at the sea. Look at that water. Oh my God. Tropics. It's just unfair. Someone coming out of Africa, living in England now. That's all I want, is to get back into the sea and just live off the land for a while, you know. Vacheron Overseas Gen 3, I believe. Bracelets, everything. These have climbed. Maybe it's my influence and many others that have spoken about this watch and this line next to the Royal Oaks and the Nautilus. This watch has climbed. I think they're going over retail now. They're really in high demand. Sadly, it was inevitable. I think we can all agree. This watch does a lot of things that its competitors don't do. The bracelet is one of the best in the industry. You can take it off in a matter of seconds, switch it onto a rubber strap, just like with your fingers, right? It's so simple. I love how the Maltese, we just looked at the Calatrava cross. Here's the Maltese cross for anyone who's new to watches. And the aesthetic of the Maltese cross is translated into the bracelet all around the bezel and even at the quarters. The Patrimony, their famous dress watch. Patrimony always had these accentuated quarters here. And yeah, there's lots of this watch to enjoy. Vibrant, dynamic. It could make for an excellent one watch. The retirement watch. Yeah, Ron saying they should be going over retail. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Compared to its competitors, it offers a lot. And my whole argument around this, I made a video, again, like 11 months ago, why you should pay attention to the overseas, is that the Nautilus and the Royal Oak have been around since the 70s. They had a formula that they nailed. This watch had 3 generations at least: the 222, the Gen 1, the Gen 2, and then this latest model. And with this, they have finally hit the nail on the head. They've captured a formula that seems to work pretty nicely. Pretty nicely. So yeah, overseas is stunning. Next up, we're jumping to Junior Johnson. I don't know if he's in the chat. Did see him earlier, I think, and I got to congratulate him on his surprise that arrived in the post from Australia. I really hope you're enjoying it. Your birthday is only on the 21st, Junior, so I won't wish you. It is only the 18th now as I'm recording this. But my birthday is on the 22nd of the next month, so I guess we are related in some way. Ron saying that one of a kind overseas that idguy made the video about, they need to release that to a wider audience. Ugh, no, Ron, please. I definitely don't need flattery tonight. I've been running the show for over 2 hours. I definitely am not in the mood. I'm not in the mood. 1 more hour, Clive. You got it. You got it, sir. I'll do it for you. Thank you for these, Juan. I mean, for those of you who've just joined in, we've seen everything from a vintage Eterna-matic Golfer to a loomed-up Explorer 2, an Intramatic, gorgeous Intramatic, Panda Daytona, the Patek, I think the 5196 Rose. Yeah, I would have this watch in a heartbeat. This is the kind of watch, like a wedding, as far as a wedding watch goes. Stunning. And then Megan's asking about the overseas versus the Streamliner. Difficult, very difficult. The first generation Streamliner, not the standard. Oh, what do you think? I prefer the bracelet of the Streamliner, honestly. I really love that crustacean lobster tail effect to it. Oh, it's so difficult. Putting me on the spot. I really don't know. Many are saying Streamliner. Streamliner takes the cake. Sam Ray. We worked out. Everyone, again, who's watching, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Yeah, this VC is stunning. Going to carry on. Next to Junior, he sends in a Seagull 63, I think. And finally, we're going to have a look at another Seagull in a moment. Now, these watches do get laughed at and poo-pooed, but the movements are great. They're actually solid workhorses, and highly recommend you try them. You can pick them up for like $100, and they're bulletproof. Truly are bulletproof. I don't know the history to the Seagull name and the brand and that development, but they were made in mass China market. This one being 21 joules, I think. I'm just guessing here, wild guess. No, it can't be. I don't know. Me and the history of Seagull, I really do not know. So I might need some help. Could be a good video actually to cover. Tippy saying $300 for this. Okay. This being a reissue of the 1963 model. And in a moment, we will see an alpha, would you believe, an alpha chronograph with a Seagull movement. Just actually in a moment. Okay, moving on next. Junior, got to say one thing I need to compliment you on is the olive drab. Now you've matched it with the NATO. Nothing, there's a common expression from South Africa where people say everything goes with khaki. And it's true. Very true. Based on the Venus, that's good, Clive. Movement is based on a Venus 175. Sold the design and dies by a Swiss in 1960. And died by the Swiss. Oh, okay. So that's it. So it's a replica of a Venus movement. It's funny how that happens. Hey, ETAs with Solitas, and it's cross-pollination anyways. Okay, moving on next. Junior, thank you for this, sir. Jumping to Carl. Carl was in the chat. And he sent this to me later in the week, I think, basically saying, this is a Waltham PW, friend's grandfather's pocket watch. Are you ready for the age? 127 years old. 127 years old, and this watch is still going. And that is always something to appreciate and admire. Look at the oxidation on that case. It's full-on rose gold at the moment. And that dial looks like something from a mantelpiece clock, Isn't that cool? And all the texture and the gold accents. I mean, it is so archaic. When we've just looked at, Pateks, for example, and other vintage models, we can just compare it to let's just do it again. I'll compare it to the 5196. This is 1930s design, right? 1930s transitional deco Bauhaus movement. I think that's where they got the inspirations, and it's very much timeless. We jump to the grandfather, basically the miniature grandfather clock, and you see just how aged it is. And it's You know what it is? It's down to the filigree on the dial. You see that we have sunflowers of some kind on every plot here. And this was very much, I don't know, give me the numbers. What's 127? What's 2020 minus 127? We're looking at like late 1800s, I would imagine, 1890s maybe, early 1900s. We have to remember, if this was Victorian time, can someone give me the number, please? I'll leave that question. What's 2020 minus 1890? Did I get that right, Perez? That is amazing. Okay. We've got to remember that the Victorian period, especially when we got to the high Victorian kind of era, when we were getting into high Gothic inspired motifs and everything else, it's very much the age of adornment. You know, people were living, many, should I say, not everyone, but many were living in the lap of luxury in their houses. They now had grandfather clocks. They now had wallpaper and windows that could open and all those wonderful things, flushing toilets and stuff. 1893. Thank you, Sam Ray. Waltham was American. Yes, it was. And it also says on the dial, American Waltham. So we think back then to that high Victorian sort of era and the age of adornment, enlightenment, we could even say. Industrial Revolution was the age of enlightenment for a lot of technology and all of that. So in a sense, it was like a renaissance, kind of, sort of, not really, but kind of. And you can see that these decorative elements were used to just go a little bit above and beyond just the generic standard. I would imagine this is enamel painted. Ian asking the price. Priceless, I would say. 127 years old. Just incredible. And you've got a winding over here. This is the only shot he sent. I don't think we have a case back shot, but still, Carl, great seeing this piece. A real antique and classic. Ron's saying, I would love to spend money on true American in-house watchmaking. I own the Vice Watch Co-Pilot and regret selling it. That's the thing, eh? And I don't know if you've heard, Ron, but would you believe that Oris has just gone in-house? They've just brought out an in-house movement. You know how cool that is? It's going to make such a difference. Okay, moving on next. Carl, thank you for this. We're jumping to Marcello. Now, we were speaking about him a moment ago with his idea of designing a watch for his final project at university. That takes balls, Marcello. That's all I can say. Your lecturers are not going to be happy, at least if they were like mine. In both countries, my lecturers were very, very harsh on any suggestion you brought forward. Just remember, substantiate everything you decide. Be sure to have good evidence about why it would work, and then they'll let it slide. This is very much the entry level. I mean, he's a university student, Marcello, and he has like a 6-watch collection that I'm jealous of, actually, because I only started getting into watches as I was coming to the end of my university time, really. And the pieces that he has, Grand Seiko already. He bought this as an achievement watch, I think, for his birthday. And yeah, man, this is something about Grand Seiko. I think they do go a little bit above and a little bit over the top sometimes with their movements and their complications. This just plain Jane, basic aesthetic is just pure Grand Seiko. You know, simple, elegant. Yeah, gorgeous watch. And notice the hands, Dauphine hands, just like the Calatrava. This is a factor, element to the brand that they use on virtually every one of their pieces, which is amazing. Yeah, stunner. Really is nice. Fits you so well. There's Marcello. This is pure Japanese design language. It is. It sure is. I mean, it's hard. You can't deny it. Industrial designers know. This sums up Japanese aesthetic very well. We've looked at German aesthetics already, and you can just see it. I love it. Japanese aesthetics. Very good point. Okay, Marcello, thank you for this. Next up, we're jumping to Mark. Just spoke about Oris a second ago, and we now have the bronze pointer date, the 80th anniversary pointer date in bronze. This watch has become so popular on this platform, not only YouTube, but social media. And yeah, it's a stunning watch. Let me try and think. 80th anniversary, so I'm guessing late 1920s-ish, 1930s, 40s. One thing I love, Fisherman's Friends. It's one thing I love. I need one. Using my voice big time. When it comes to dress watches, I really enjoy 1940. Thank you, Perez. The idea of having an external date and not relying on date windows, I think is such a intelligent feature of using space on the dials. This will be discussed in the 1815 Lunga video later on next week. I really appreciate a dress watch that doesn't have much around its dial when it comes to complication, and my voice is now quite literally on the brink. I'm going to get back into it. Fisherman's friend, do your work. I can tell you, these have saved my life many times. Just give me a second. Sucking. They've done so many good things here, like the bezel, the fluting of the bezel. When I say coin edging, it looks really sharp. This is not good. Voice is now on the brink. Time for a water break. Be with you in a moment, ladies and gents. Tell you, you won't believe how much I have to look after my voice before these shows. I basically whisper around the house the entire Saturday. So what I think is so nice about this combination is bronze case, bronze, everything else with a green dial. Of course, it means that when the bronze eventually ages, it matches the green on the dial. My voice is still not improving. I'm going to mute myself. Sorry about that. I don't know if that's going to help, but we'll see. Some more water is needed. We've been doing so well. I've got the smoker's voice now. It's great. So yeah, green dial, green case, everything else. I think once this bronze eventually does tarnish and age, it'll match the dial very nicely. Ashley's saying, keep it together. Don't worry. Don't worry. The 4, it's also cool, right? I didn't even notice. The 4 has this amazing, looks like sailcloth, like you would see on a yacht, you know, and just other little quirky details. Like, I think this is how the crystal distorts the 9 and everything else here. But yeah, it's a gorgeous looking model. And again, love the idea of the pointed date. Speaking of which, I'm going to jump back up to the top. Mark, remember? The watch that we've featured as the main cover photo piece is this amazing Patek that is very classically inspired, but also has these modern windows, you know. And in this case, it works so well, I think. It just feels so modern. I didn't speak about this piece enough. I love it. I think it's gorgeous what they've done here. Tuxedo, you know. So in this situation, they've done an excellent job of keeping it restrained, classically inspired, but it looks more modern, has a more modern transitional kind of approach to it. Then we jump all the way back down to, go back to Juan and his Patek. 1936, this feels much more classical in a way, classically inspired with these facets on the batons and everything there. And then back down to Mark, the Oris date. You can kind of see where we're looking at different zones. Hot lemon tea. Do the vocal cords. You know, I used to be in a cappella groups and everything back in the day, Perez. And what did I used to have? Lemon was the secret. Need a shot of bourbon, Megan. No, alcohol, bourbon especially kills me. Not sponsored, Fisherman's Friend. Need to reach out to those guys. You're the best. Thanks everyone for sticking with me through my toils. Oris pointed date. Got to really say the bronze case does complete this quite well because it's very much a watch of its time in a way. Loch Lomond whiskey. I still have a shot glass or two of that gorgeous Loch Lomond. What is it called? I'm going to butcher the name, Eric Bell. Could use another one though. Got to say, your in-house Loch Lomond brand is stunning. Eric Bell is based in Loch Lomond, and he sent me a whiskey a couple of months ago, and it's gorgeous. It really is stunning. It's one thing that's amazing about the UK is that you have amazing whiskies on offer. Clive, beautiful. That just completes it. We've now just hit the 3-hour mark, so I should be losing it at this point, right? It's almost like it's natural. It's just it. So, Mark, thank you for that. Next, we're jumping to Matt with the Hamilton car key field. And here we have a reverse dial. I didn't even know these existed. You know how you do this? You put the photo in Photoshop, you cut out the dial, and then just hit invert. I think that's what they might have done. And can't do coffee. Yeah, talking about coffees, geez, I'm going to be up until like 3 in the morning, so I can tell you. Really enjoy this aesthetic. It's so legible, actually. The question is, does this watch have lume? Maybe someone can tell me. Matt, if you're in the chat, it'd be nice to know. Megan's my new marketing manager. You sure are. You sure are. As is black on white. Be very interested in knowing if there is loom, if this, because I do know there is such a thing as black loom on these models. So yeah, crazy. There's an unusual amount of Hamilton in the stream. How many have we seen? There's another one we're going to have a look at in a moment, actually. Speaking of which, it's funny, there's no rhyme or reason to these. They just arrive. So Matt sent me in two: Hamilton Khaki Field, date complication, which is something quite surprising and unique, like that fact. And he also sent in a Tag Heuer Formula One. This is a cool looking watch. I mean, people bag on Tag Heuer. This looks really good. So this was his 15th birthday father's gift. I don't know how old Matt is, but if you're getting into the hobby at this age, props to you, man. Really, for anyone getting into this hobby at that kind of age, I really kicked myself that I didn't get into the hobby earlier. Growing up in Africa, thinking about watch. Again, you can't exactly walk around with watches around there because they get ripped off your wrist, but needless to say. So Clive saying, what is the stream? Needs more Polar Explorers. Clive, we've had about 8 of them. I wonder if there are any more. Well, there's going to be an awesome Patek coming on just now. So all I can say, wait for this. You're going to enjoy it. I think we do have another damn Explorer in here somewhere. But Matt, this is a gorgeous watch. I look at this and I think, you know what? They've done an excellent job here with the hands, with the dial, the 12. It looks very, very good. I wouldn't say it looks like a Tag Heuer. Change the branding on the dial and you could put Lucerne Chateau on this dial and people would believe it. Really. Not bad. Caliber 6, sub-dial. Good. Formula One. Is this under the Carrera line? I don't know. Yeah. Really clean, brushed bezel. So Matt, thank you for these two. Very utilitarian and out of left field. Kind of like it. Next, we're jumping to Max. And Thomas, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Keep it up. I will try my utmost. And Clive, no innuendos, Clive. No innuendos. You're not allowed. So from Max, he sends in, how am I going to get this right? 3 hours into the show, will I be able to do it? Anonimo millimetri. Anonimo millimetri automatic. And this micro brand, handcrafted in Firenze, that is pretty cool. We see where the inspirations came from. And I like that fact. I think for an Italian brand to look back to their cushion cases, to Panerai as their inspiration, this makes for an excellent looking Panerai. Can you imagine? I don't know what that second crown is. Can someone help me? Is that for setting the date? What does it do? Does it have an alarm or does it have a bezel? No, it doesn't. I really don't know what that other crown is. Helium release valve? I don't know. Ron says kind of like it. You know what? Panerai inspiration, Arabics. It looks like your typical Seamaster from back in the day. I guess that's what I find sings to me. The pencil hands. I'm not a fan of pencil hands that have these breaks in them. I've decided they look a little bit strange for what they are. But interesting combination of parts. Have a look at the brand. I'm going to pull it up on the screen again. I'm not going to try and pronounce it again. That's an A behind there. So Anonimo Millimetri. I'm not Italian. I'm a mixture of Scottish and English and South African, so apologies. Helium escape valve, Raymond, really? That's the case. And 100 meters water resistant. Would you need a helium escape valve at 100 meters, Eric Bell? It keeps the loom in. It keeps the loom in. That went over my head, Clive. Sorry, it's getting late. Next from Max, he sends in. Oh, here we go. So this is the Longines I was telling you about earlier on. Does it say 1,000 meters? Am I reading this wrong? 1,000. You know what? 100 atmospheres. This guy is fading, ladies and gents. I need some support here. 1,000 meters. Right. That's impressive. It's very impressive. Thank you for that, everyone. 100 atmospheres, 1,000 meters. This is called the Longines Hour Angle, I think. Maybe it was Angel or Angle. I maybe spelled it wrong. 1988. And what makes this one in particular very special is this was Longines' last in-house movement before everything, the fit hit the shan, you could say. This was their last in-house caliber. And I think it is stunning. It's the Glycemin Airman on steroids, you know? Look at that bezel. What? is going on there? Every single, I mean, look at this. Every quarter has 15, 30, 45, 2, 15. The person, if imagine someone actually sitting down, watch back in the day, making these watches and actually writing in, scribing all of these in. That's enough to drive you nuts. I mean, look, now they've inversed it. 15, 30. Oh my, that is insane. That's a complete mind blow. Hey, I mean, what? I don't know what all these references are here, but overall, it's just typical. You have this awesome onion style crown, Breitling inspired cluster. Is that what Breitling did as well? Navi timer. I don't know anything about this history. Love the Breguet hands, the inset, beautiful, what we call it, champagne dial. It's just crazy. I think it reminds me of the early aviators, the ones who pretty much sat on kites that had motors attached to them and flew across the channel, and the Victorian kind of era back in the day. We're in this together. Thanks, Megan. That's great support. The Longines Lindbergh. Is that what it's called, Tippy? As in Lindbergh, like the hot air balloon, not the Hindenburg, but was that also, or was it named after Charles? Okay, so as in an aviator, I'm guessing. Looks good, as Juan says. Does look very good. I really like this. I shouldn't, because it's just so out of left field, but it is just, I mean, you don't see these. And for them to actually remember, this is a 1988 recreation of a classic from the year dot. I don't know. First guy to cross the Atlantic in a plane. Really? Charles Lindbergh. I'm trying to remember. That's not, I'm thinking of the English aviator who came up with all the planes and everything back in the day. Don't even start with history with me now. It's too late. First guy to cross the Atlantic in a plane. Crazy story. I mean, this is awesome. I also think the accents are cool. 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90. I mean, what were they smoking? Look at it all. This is the Navi timer before the Navi timer was even conceived. Love it. Max, thanks for this. Next up, I think it's the same Max. I think it is. Is it? I don't know. Judged by the arm hair. Yes, it is the same Max. This is how you can see it. My serialization of people is marvelous. I think this is the same Max. Love the forest in the background, and we have a Seiko Turtle Prospex. I'm going to take a guess. I don't know the reference. SBG SBNY 1511. I can't do Seiko references, ladies and gentlemen. King, the Turtle King. Is that what they call it? Help me. Art saying, aren't South African mainly Dutch? No, Art Mallory, they aren't. It's a real cross-pollination, I would say. I mean, my family, my dad's side is from Scotland, mum's side's from England, and everyone migrated to South Africa. My grandparents went down there in the 40s and 50s. So no, there's so many different. There's Italians, there's Portuguese, there's basically any kind of culture you can imagine there. It's amazing for that reason too. You learn a lot in such a small space. So be saying it's the Turtle King. Thank you. Hans, yes, we're still going. Can you believe? Coming close to the end though. We have about, 20 more. Some amazing stuff though. Don't worry. The show hasn't ended yet. So this is a gorgeous shot. But then this I thought was unique. Fishing pole. Nothing better than a context shot for a presentation. You like the Cyclops. Well, you like anything green, so I would imagine you dig this watch. But the extended Cyclops, see what he did there in the chat. That's good. For the date complication. I'm wondering if they had any kind of issues with Rolex for doing something like this. I mean, this is pretty much right out of their catalog, Was there any kind of legal issues or anything there? I think Panerai did something similar with their reverse raindrop effect inside the crystal. I wonder if there was any kind of dispute, or if this is something that Seiko has done for a long time. I tell you, for all we do talking about Swiss brands, mainly Tudors and Rolexes and all of those references and histories, Seiko alone is the kind of brand that you could spend your whole life studying and still never fully understand. It's the 1% thing. It's if you can understand 1%, it's good enough. Yeah. Sorry for laughing into the mic. It's a habit. So yeah, Seiko Turtle King. Thank you for this, Max. And finally, Vulcan Cricket. Classic Vulcan Cricket from the 50s, I would imagine. The next watch we're going to have a look at is one of the showstoppers, I think. So unique and strange. Going to enjoy it. Clive, I knew you would incorporate Tiger King in there somewhere. It's just Turtle King's greater than. Yeah, I agree. Um, Angles of yaw, turn 15, 30, etc. Eric Bell. Thank you. That's to do with navigation, flying. Yeah. Q Spock jokes. Yeah, yeah. Um, it makes such a strange noise. And when you think of the Memovox, the JLC Memovox also makes a similar. There's different variants of the Memovox. Some that sound like a cricket, and others that have a beautiful chime to them. So, yeah, we've seen a couple of crickets in the past. More modern ones, I think. This being one of the original establishers, you can just see this watch is out of the 50s by the Deco reintroduction. Back in the 50s, we transitioned from the Depression and we start seeing this big boom again. And the 50s was a time when they started looking back at Deco inspirations when it came to lug and case designs. And look at the Vacheron Corne de Vache as an example. Really are pretty stunning. Those hands have seen better days, though. Wow. Switzerland, isn't that cool? I love it. Old school inspirations. I could spend all my time just sitting back and discussing. I mean, we looked at those Caravel and all of those pieces earlier on in the show. And you got to just appreciate where these inspirations came from. And more brands should be looking at this, I think. More brands should be focusing in on what made these quirky watches special. Incorporate that into their new identities of watches. Yeah. So, Max, thank you for your submissions. I don't know if you've seen this with us tonight or if you're going to see it later on, but thank you so much. Great selection of pieces. Now, to one of the last Pateks, I think, and this is from Matthews. I'm going to screw up your name again and again. Matthews, I'm going to say. I am so impressed by this nephew. I'm so impressed by this Patek Neptune. The nephew of the Nautilus, right? Reference 5080. Move aside, Rolex OPs, with your stunning new stellar dials and have a look at a bit of a classic inspiration here. So there's a few variants of these, and lots of talk is surrounding the salmon dials. I think they're the most sought after. But this is a line of Patek Philippe that has been lost to time. Many people, I think it's a 36 mil Ant, if I remember right. Yeah, it looks kind of 36-ish. Many people do say that they miss this watch because it's just so peculiar and unique. Just have a close look at the texture of the bezel with the bracelet. Look, it's not a watch for everyone. It's not a Uncle of the Nautilus, Russell. Russell knows his Pateks. Please give us a history if you can. This is definitely a watch that has the deco, very, very deco feel to it. You know, a watch of its time. I love the Romans at the quarters. Just add some other dynamic elements. The numerals at the 5 and the 10. The date window, I'm not so much of a fan about. I think no date would just be so clean. But as a combination, you wear this into a room of anyone who is. I mean, if you are an enthusiast or not, this watch will catch someone's attention. It's beautiful. It really is. It's beautiful in a different sense of just aesthetically. It has this otherworldly, other time feel to it. And I love the fact that we've looked at Pateks today. We had a look at the 5196, which is bread and butter. The fancy annual calendar in the beginning, that's very much like a modern transitional. And this does feel like a Victorian era or like a deco period. Yeah, really is something nice. One of my favorites, very Cartier-ish, Raymond. You know what? It is, we could say fashion watch inspired. I think it has that kind of draw to it too. Also notice that with the bezel, you have this, it's engine turned kind of Air King style to it, where you can tell the time using the bezel every 5-minute mark. It's a peculiar beast, really is peculiar. One of the most peculiar of the show, I think. Just the right amount of polish. Yeah, it's nuts. There's no brushing. Everything has been machine done. So it's either polishing or you have these vertical machine lines. The Neptune, ladies and gents, I don't know what they're trading for, but have a good look, because I think they are pretty outliers in the purest sense, for sure. Okay, thank you so much for this. One of my favorites of the show, again, the Pateks have just been winners all through the evening. I've spoken about them way, way too much. Is Hans leaving us? Shame. Sorry, Hans. Good to have you here, sir. I can understand why. It's 1:15 on a Sunday. Why do I do it to you guys? Sorry. Thank you for this. What a gorgeous piece. We're jumping next to Patrick. Patrick sends in another vintage, and I don't think he gave me the date, but this looks like a 40s era piece. Grandfather's old watch, caliber 2207-2, and it is just a classic, really, through and through. I feel like these dials were shed. This is definitely a 1940s era, really is. I feel like it was something from about 1945-ish, just by looking at the layout of the piece. Because just remember, Longines and Omega had a lot of sharing between parts back in the day, and these dials were basically chopped and changed. So maybe someone can give me some reference here. Again, the caliber reference that he told me is 2207-2, and there is a photo of it in a moment. Everyone's mentioning Love the Patek. It is something quite nice, I must say. I mean, look at that thing. That is the summer watch. Hey, I don't know if it has a screw down crown. What a strange beast. I would totally wear it. I mean, this is something really to make a statement. Yeah, awesome. Patek Neptune, reference 5080 if you want to have a look. So yeah, classic Omega, 1940s. I mean, the way you can tell that this is a 40s era is that you have this almost ruler-inspired minute track that runs around it. Notice that it looks like something out of a school workbook in a way. And these numerals also give it away. But Junior, oh, thank you so much for the super chat, really. Got to take my granddaughter home. Enjoy it. I don't know what time it is in the world where you are at the moment, but enjoy your Saturday, really. Megan's saying it's 2:15 in Paris. I tell you, you guys are seriously committed. And Junior, thank you again for the super chat. I mean, geez, everyone who's been a part of these shows, I couldn't do it without you all, because the audience makes it more fun, more entertaining. You give me some more information about the pieces, and your submissions are just, it's because of your submissions that these shows run, and it's a joy. I believe it's from 1937, John says. I cannot. That is insane. Is that really the case? I see these numerals and think 40s, but you could be very much on the head as well. 1930s, just before we enter Second World War time. Makes sense. Does make sense. Yeah, awesome, Patrick. And he also sent in the movement. Can you believe this? That's one thing that continually blows me away about mechanical watches. You see a car from 1937. That engine is poked, boy. That looks like it's been through a proper coal mine at that stage. Wires hanging everywhere, oil leaks, nothing works. Everything has to be completely stripped and restored. This watch looks brand new still. It's incredible. And these movements were all workhorses. I'll read the movement out again, but I think I've done enough. And the old school script, I mean, that's just one example of classicism. Beautiful. It is just stunning. And this is another watch. I mean, we looked at that Hamilton Intramatic earlier. Another watch here that is not built to be looked at or admired. Look at the adjustments on that bridge, on the balance. Sorry, all the different weights. It's insane. 17 joules once again. Got a guess. 17 joules. Carlos, always a great stream from Manlia. Wow, I think you're one of the first viewers from Manlia here. Thank you so much, so much. It's amazing how this channel reaches out to people. Outreach in the world. Yeah, I'm just a humble guy from South Africa, now living in England. It all happens there. So yeah, talk about a column wheel chronograph. This model is not adorned at all, not made to be seen, but it's just, I mean, look at the symmetry between everything shared here. And again, can you believe this movement is from late 1930s, early 1940s? Must have been a Lemonia, Tippy says. There's lots of movement junkies on this page, so please, by all means, fill in. 73 Math says, a decent, well-made watch will last forever if looked after. It's just incredible. It is just incredible. 1930s, 1940s, and it's still going. Grandfather's old watch. Yeah, charming. Very charming. Thank you for this, Patrick. Next, we are jumping to Raymond. I think we have... Is this the first time we're sharing Raymond's pieces? I think it is. Raymond's been on the show the entire time. You sent me a huge description about this piece. And I must have been saving these at about 2 in the morning. And I'm sorry, but I didn't write down all the specs. I might need some help. I might need a bit of help here. So this is an Ebel Sport Wave Mediterranean World Timer. And it's something to do with the PDL and local time. And you can use this pusher basically adjusts. Help me, someone. It's very difficult to clarify, but is there any other specs that he gave me here? Again, I do save these in slots. It's also a GMT. I do save these submissions in slots every day. So you can't do 100 savings at once. Mediterranean World Timer. Thank you, Raymond. If you'd like to give us a bit more specifications around this movement, because there's something quite fascinating about it. When it comes to saving these, it's like 20, maybe 25 a day if possible. And sometimes that can be 2 or 3 in the morning. So I'm a bit groggy and I can't write down the full description. Yeah, I have to assign names and all the specs of these pieces to. Oh, it's ridiculous. I don't know how I do it. Drugs and stimulants. 18 karat bezel. It is really. It's definitely a watch of its time. I would imagine I would imagine like a 90s era piece. You can recognize this bracelet. Kind of has that lobster tail effect. I think. Cool looking aesthetic. Two-tone. Being a world timer. This PDL, you can actually adjust it in a way, right? There's a way of adjusting for the world time. Sportwave line were priced above tag and just below Amiga back in the day. Eric, thank you for that. Really. A world timer, 1980, 1990. Geez, I don't even know how I'd be able to use it. I'm so accustomed to seeing all the different countries in the world on the dial. Isn't that funny? Where this is much more streamlined in a way. Tippy says, a watchmaker once said, a good mechanical movement lasts for eternity, but quartz movement would last only for some time. Only a few quartz like Grand Seiko would last forever. Was that not Roger Smith, but the founder? God, I'm 3 hours in. I'm going to be really tripping over my words here. I've got to carry on through. We've still got some submissions to go through here. Raymond, moving on from the eBell, if you don't mind. eBell World Timer. I'm just so used to seeing script on the dial, which is a much more archaic way of setting up a dial, much more classical. This feels so much more modern without any of that on it, you know? And so Richard Harboring said it. Thank you, Tippy. Jeez. There was actually a Harboring submission that I didn't save in time because the show just started. Anyway, I've got to carry on. We're going to be here for hours, as we have been already. And this is a Glycemin SST-12 GMT, 69 reissue, supersonic transportation. This was in commemoration of the Concorde. Yes, I remember this. My old man actually flew Concorde back in the day a couple of times, and I'm sure many of you did too. It's quite a story. It's very sad that the Concorde was discontinued for the best way. So Glycemin Emmons, we have seen an original reissue, and now we're having a look at the very 70s-ish styled reissue with orange accents. I mean, it's just right on the nose, right? But you notice the same aesthetics on the dial. 24-hour scale. This has a compressor set up, so you can adjust details here. So you have so many options for GMT setting. You have at least 3 different time zones. Insane. It's gorgeous. eBell doesn't have my country in the photo. Tippy says, oh, geez. Let's have a look quickly. Let's have a look. Yeah. Nothing of the East, sadly. Don't have New Zealand. This is a very poor imitation of Australia. Yeah, it's very like deco-ish in a way. It's very like simplistic, toned down. So yeah, Glycemin Emmon, we've spoken about enough, but the NATO sums it up. Yes, BDev, I do agree. It does really clean up the aesthetic, orange accents, black on orange. It's nice. Really is a piece that represents its time in a way, 1970s-ish with the old school case. Overall, great work watch. And compared to the first model that we looked at, it does really sing. No Tasmania, they usually miss out. The smaller the places, they really lose touch. Yeah, it's sad. Okay, next up, Raymond, thank you for this. We're jumping to Reed next. I can't believe we're still going. This was cool. I'm going to try. Oh, geez, he gave me a full spec on this model. It's a Hamilton from 1982. I think it's a Hamilton. And he took this into repair at TikTok Watch Repair in LA, Los Angeles. They gave it an overhaul. This piece is from the 80s, and he's kept it in a drawer, and he just had it serviced and fixed up, and now it's just such a cool everyday wearer. I think everyone should enjoy a field watch. There's something about them that's just so out of this genre of sports and dress. It's managed to find its own setting, its own little niche. Tritium, as Eric Bell says, yes. known as the pumpkin. Raymond, thank you again. Sorry that I'm jumping through to the next. I've got to carry on with the show. We're now hitting the 3.5 hour mark. Good Lord. Oh, come on, you can do it. You can do it. So we have the typical, this was right at the time with Marathon and everything else. These brands were now putting radiation symbols on the dials to tell us that this is in fact a radioactive isotope. And you can see the lume has degraded over time. But these pieces are just great. I feel like this could be a Benrus. I don't actually know what the reference is. Reed is an ex-Marine officer. Oh, wow. So this is probably his watch that he's had all the way through. That is, I did not know that story, Mark. Thank you. Well, if you are watching, I think we did see you earlier. One hell of a piece. These field watches, Benrus's, Hamilton's, they are so popular in the States. They're so easy to find as well. They get them for like $200. And yeah, everyone should appreciate a field watch because it bridges this gap between sports and dress today, I think. There's no rhyme or reason with watches anymore. Wear what you like. But the field watch has its own little niche that I think should be enjoyed. Simple, hand wound, beautiful typeface, easy to read, 24-hour time if you're based in the States. If you're based more in Europe, you just deal with the standard time only, just the simple 1 to 12 layout. Yeah, awesome. On the Bond, RAF, NATO, of course. That's awesome. Really dig it. Reed, thank you. I think I did see you earlier. I should get one. I would love to get a Benrus, actually. Kind of a Vietnam era Benrus. Maybe the military spec, not the civilian. The civilian issue didn't have any printing on the dial, right? I don't know. Field watches is always the case. Reed, thank you. Next, we're moving to Robert. And Robert sent in a picture of this is a micro brand as well. It's called here we go with these names again. Obris Morgan Explorer 2. And he is on holiday in Hawaii on this shot. So as you can see, gotta love the beach. I could spend a month on the beach just not doing anything. I really feel like I need a proper vacation. We all do. Let's be honest. The whole world needs a proper freaking vacation. It'd be nice for all of us to just spend time on the beach eventually when everything subsides. As far as a micro brand diver goes, again, it's so difficult to find your own footing in this area, this space. We spoke about Monta earlier on and how they've bridged the gap. Here I see a watch that looks a bit more generic in a way. When you look at, one thing I do like is the small batons at these points here next to the ones on the quarters. It does feel a bit, oops, come back. It does feel a bit more streamlined in a way, a bit easier to read. Yeah, and the orange rubber strap is also nice and clean, pencil hands. Nice looking piece. Very 70s inspired, I think. That's where they were going. Late 60s and 70s with that squared plot on the second hand. Nice looking watch. And also the finishing. Got to say, the brushing on the case is fantastic. The crown. Yeah, awesome. Really is. Also enjoy that Explorer. You can't see it. It's a group of pixels, but Explorer is actually outlined on the dial. So yeah, that's I think one of the last micro brand divers we'll be looking at. Insane. We're coming close to the end, ladies and gents, but don't worry. We've got Lungas at the very end to enjoy, and there are some excellent photographs. And Ron the Shrink, you're next. Robert, thank you for sending this. I hope you're enjoying your time in Hawaii, if you're still there, in the sand. Highly recommend you find a good place to bury yourself and just enjoy the gorgeous weather. Next up, we have Ron the Shrink with his latest acquisition, which is another Seamaster. We featured one earlier on. I think I could actually, Ron, you didn't see this. I'm going to go back up to the top and find it. To Demetrius. Where is he? He sent in this. I've got to say, it's one of the best photos I've ever seen of this watch, bar none. It is just sublime, right? You get to enjoy all of those details there. And Ron brings up this point when he sent the watch to me, saying that when you talk about value proposition, this is it. This is one example of a watch that really is, it's not underappreciated at all, but you can get them for such a steal. And for what you're getting, coaxial movement, all the trimmings, a proper workhorse. It's one watch that you can just use for virtually anything and everything. Next to the modern variants, this one with the smaller crown, very much the transitional. You know, it's kind of, this might be quite an important piece in the future because we see a lot of 90s eras, lots of the latest ones. These transitionals with the flat dials, the new ceramic There are a few aspects to it that's a bit peculiar. Overall, though, great lot of fun to wear. Got to enjoy. Yeah, talking about traveling, I miss it. I really do. Really, really do miss it. So yeah, Ron, superb shot. I hope you're still here with us, if you're still awake. And the rest of you who are still watching and are still awake, thank you for sticking it out with me. And next to Ryan. Oh, geez, would you believe? This is not rigged. This is not rigged, ladies and gents. We've just seen one and we've just jumped to another. Now, this is his set of pieces that he sends in. A Mido diver, a Mido or Mido, the same Seamaster that we've just looked at from Ron, and the Enquire super compressor. And these are the two that he wanted focused on. The Enquire is his favorite. And aren't these like really, it's the Sherpa. Oh, I've heard speak about this before. Clive, are you still watching? The Sherpa is a popular piece now, and you can get it for a really good price as well. I love it. Super compressors. Compressor cases really were all the rave back in the day. Taking another help from my fisherman's friend. I go live with my little help from my fisherman friend. Right, in the chats. I'm missing all of you here. Another one from Ant. I don't know what you mean there. A lot of this is probably going over my head. Ron saying you got a Seamaster for $3,000. Yeah, great deal out there. Non-wave dial. Surely, truly believe. So check out the divide between these two models. One that is very much modern and the other that is classically, 70s inspired. The Sherpa graph, because damn Sherpa ain't going to graph themselves. Yeah, the Sherpa graph as in being a chronograph, right? This just being the standard Sherpa with the compressor. It's the diver variant, the compressor diver. I love it, hey? Any car. If you want to get some great value out there, check out any car in the vintage space. Massive crown guard. I think it really complements it well, Blaine. As far as the aesthetic goes, I think there's something about this that does ring true. It's an added element, very much like we've spoken about how the helium valve is an added design element to these. The Seamasters, I'll try and get the mouse big. Similar here, added crown just adds that little bit of extra to the aesthetic and the approach. Gorgeous models. And Edikar, we haven't even spoken about the Mido. I don't know if this is a new edition piece, but it's also super compressor. And as a pairing, you can see that Ryan enjoys the intrigue when it comes to bracelets. He enjoys compressors, but he also seems to have quite an appeal at looking at how these dials have been addressed so differently. I do really enjoy. I mean, he's even set the time right for all of us to look at. It's just great. The enthusiast in the space. If it was me choosing one of these, I would take the any car, any day. Looks good. Ultra Drive. I mean, that's real marketing right there. The Sherpa Ultra Drive. I think they said, I can't even know. Ultra Dive. My eyesight's going too. Moving on next, Ryan. Thank you for this. Jumping to Sebastian. Now we were speaking about the Seamaster 300 James Bond edition and those models earlier. This is his shot of his Seamaster in the car. And this is an example. This is a tribute to the 57 models that we know. And I think they've really done a great job here with everything. They've done some nice accents like the recessing of the batons into the dial, which is unique. The stepping, size and scale, 41 mils, a bit divisive, I guess. I don't know if it works for everyone's wrists, but on the leather, yeah, just mentioning by Tippy, cool shot. It really is. It really does look like a proper stealth watch. Also nice seeing it on an Omega NATO, even though they are extremely overpriced, but they are well made. No questions there. Broad arrow. And funnily enough, you won't believe what we're going to look at in a moment. The last submission before we jump to Russell's pieces is a broad arrow from the 1957 trilogy reissues. So we're going to enjoy that. But yeah, Seamaster, you can't go wrong with a Seamaster. They really are. When all the sorry about this, the mouse like starts acting up at the 3-hour mark, I think it also gets sick and tired of me. Regardless of where the attention goes, there's something about the Seamaster that has a really nice edge in the space of luxury Swiss divers, I believe. Gorgeous. Moving on next to Sion. I'm really butchering your name there, so I'm gonna say Sion. And would you believe we haven't seen one of these? It's an Explorer, 30th birthday. It's birth year watch. I assumed. I think we put the dates together, and I assumed that this is his birth year watch. Very much. It was made not the same month. I think it was like a month apart between him and the watch being made. So yeah, we get to appreciate yet another explorer. Has anyone been able to keep track on how many we've looked at? I think must be about like 5, 6, 8. I really don't know. But yeah, another great piece. This being a Holes case, hollow end link. I feel like he's about the same age as me, actually. Born in about the early 90s. 1990, I think he said. Don't know. Don't quote me on that. Another one, and says, I swear, can someone tell me how many we've looked at? At least 6. I'm going to guess. At least 6 or 7 in one show. I mean, geez. Best value for money, best value in watches today. One of them, that Seamaster, we watch guy. Wisconsin watch guy, we're going to get to you in a moment. Right, just like you're pretty much the next on the list. Sion, thank you for sending this in. Sadly, we've seen about 15 of these already in the show. 894. It's crazy. But this shot is stunning. It really is gorgeous. I just can't believe how much you guys are in cahoots when it comes to submitting watches, and you all seem to send the same thing. It happens all the time, especially with explorers. 36 mils or the polar dials or the 42 mil models. It's nuts. Thank you for the Sion. Very under the radar, as low under the radar as you can get. Then to Tarek, who sends in. Now he normally sends in IWCs for us to look at. I think he also owns a Moser that he sent in a couple of weeks back. And for someone to appreciate Alpha as a brand on top of it, as a cheerful pick up and go, awesome shot, by the way. Don't know what the skyline is, but Alpha chronographs. I mean, I know them pretty well. I had a good time with the brand back in the day. The Alpha Paul Newman, I think they called it that. Seagull chronograph complication. I mean, it's great fun. 100 or so bucks. You get to enjoy the hell out of it. Really dig the green strap. I guess he got it to match the loom. And the seagull movement that we've been speaking about, based on a Venus caliber, I remember. I don't know. But workhorses, that's all I can say. You can abuse these things and they'll keep going no matter what you do. So really, 100 or so bucks, you can enjoy a great chronograph. And Mark says, how do you do this? I'm dying here and I'm just watching. As in, you're dying of laughter or you're dying of boredom or sleep? Mark, I don't know. I don't know what it is. There's like a second wave. Something switches in my brain, tells me to keep going. And I'm just on it. Marathon man. It's my nickname, I guess. Very cool in the green strap. Yeah. And again, Tarek owns a whole, in the very beginning, I think he sent in about 5 different IWCs, a gorgeous Moser Fume, the other show. And you can still appreciate these little entry-level pieces for knocking about, having fun. This hobby is about enjoyment at the end of the day. You know how it is. Laughter and tiredness, Mark. I'm glad you get amusement out of my suffering. It's good. It's good. Next to Tetley. Thank you for this, Tarek. Please send in your Moser again. I love the photos that you took of it the other time. It was just ridiculous. Tetley sends in, how cool is this piece? This is one of the last submissions next to Wisconsin Watch Guy. And then we're jumping to Russell. And Russell always brings out some gorgeous, not only the photography, but the big guns. We get to appreciate some finer details to pieces. Eberhard and Company, automatic. A Scaphomaster. Where did they come up with these names? Was that just my 2 a.m. saving and renaming this wrong? Is it called a Scaphomaster? Is it made for scaffolding, or what's the? Gotta say, that dial is really captivating. This looks exactly like IWC Ocean 1000. Dino, missed me. Welcome to the show. It's been a while. I've taken a good 2 weeks off, but it's nice to be back and refreshed. We're coming close to the end of the show, but the replay is all there for you, and we've had a hell of a long time chatting about all sorts. This reminds me of the IWC Ocean 2000 or 1000. I can never get it right. That is the thing that speaks to me. What a gorgeous dial. And then you have Breguet inspired, very Breguet marine inspired lugs that attach, that actually articulate as well. And that crown, talk about getting massage therapy while you're wearing it. Isn't that cool? I don't know how that would affect the nervous system. Might need to let me know. But gotta say, this is a really stunning watch. Eberhard is another brand, like all these other names, Ebel that we looked at earlier, and Caravel, and go to the beginning of the show and you'll see we looked at some vintage divers, and this falls into the same category. This being a reissue, I'm sure, called the Scaffo Master. No idea where that name comes from. Scaff meaning boat. Eric, knew you would come through. Thank you for that. Helps me a lot. Samurai saying the bezel seriously looks like a Coke bottle cap. Wow, you're right, eh? You are right. Probably very easy to grip too. I must say, I appreciate it when a bezel actually recesses into the case because it's just cleaner. There's less to hang up on. This is such a streamlined watch. Actually, also has Panerai. Would this be like a Luminor inspired insert here with these highlighted elements here on the quarters? Stunning looking piece. Really stands out. Great. Flip and Zipper, all of you guys who are still here, I can't believe it. How do you put up with me for over 3 freaking hours? I just don't know, man. You're amazing people. That's all I can say. It's just a gift. It really is a gift to be able to withstand listening to me for so long. I would be so bored of listening to myself. A really interesting crown, as Nick J says. Yeah, proper masseuse right here. I imagine they'd call it the Massage Therapy 1000. Yeah, nice looking piece though. Very streamlined. This is one of the prettiest divers I think we featured on the show. I'm going to have a look at this afterwards. Really great. And finally, to Wisconsin Watch Guy. Got to end on a high note. Speedmaster 1957 reissue. These are very sought after all of a sardine. People are really keen to pick these models up. And what's not to like? There's talk about the Ed Whites and the first Omega in space. But then you want to go to that little bit of an extra step in another direction. I own the 57 Seamaster. I would own one of these, honestly. I think it is just the broad arrow. It doesn't make sense in many ways. Remember, this was the first Speedmaster. And a broad arrow setup on the dial, like, what is that? How does that work? Doesn't matter. It just looks aesthetically interesting. Also notice the downside of the first Omega in space is that it has a polished running seconds. These are all white. I'd also love to see a white hand. I think some of these variants did come with a white main chronograph hand too, applied logo as well. So many little factors. So yeah, got to appreciate a classically inspired. Tao saying the trick is not following the whole stream, but jumping on and off. Yeah, you guys, amazing. Megan, thank you. Everyone, all of you, and I know a lot of you regulars who are always here, and it really does mean a lot. These shows always go a lot faster for someone who's presenting when there's an audience who is captivated and just as interested and wanting to share and talk. And yeah, Wisconsin Watch Guy. I think you picked this up quite recently, if I remember right. And yeah, we've been rocking these watches for a little while. Got to say, they are precious. 39 mil. It's more like, no, they're not. They're 37 and a half, something like that. It's 38 mils, I think. The Seamaster is the only true 39 mil. These are actually more like 38 and a half. This and the Railmaster, which is bizarre. Stunning looking piece though. I would pick this over the first Omega in space given the opportunity. The prices though are climbing. Prices are really going. Especially the Japanese domestic market, by the way. They are going for them crazily too. It's funny how these watches appeal to certain geographies. I found that mainly in Japan, they're loving these reissues. Strap matches the loom. I fully agree, B-Dev. Really does look great. This also comes on a flat link bracelet, which is gorgeous. So, Tao, thank you for the super chat. I don't know if I said that already. Black Dragon from California. I've got to go out to California. We need to have a meetup in California. Wouldn't that be cool? There'll probably be like 50 people. It's amazing how much of a watch community there is in California, you know? Okay, so we watch guy, you have just finalized the submissions and now we jump to Russell. I leave Russell for last normally because he always brings out some great photography and everything in between. So we are going to have a good look. Let's start with the longer datograph in the dark. A little bit of a offsetting. Now what's crazy is that this dial, this is the datograph Lumen, by the way. Let's meet in San Francisco. Love to. I'd love to. San Fran is a great place. Been there once. So what's a good way to start? We're going to jump to, let's start with the loom first. So this is called the Lunga Datograph Lumen. I think it's a platinum case. I'm going to need a bit of help here, Russell, if you don't mind, because as you know, at this time of the night, I'm about to die, as you probably are. He's like 40 miles away from me up the road. So what makes the Datograph Lumen so amazing is that we know the dial, everything glows in the dark. It's very phantom-esque. There's translucency in places. The subdials glow. The tachymeter glows. When I saw this watch released, it really took my breath away. When you set a watch as a wallpaper, the second it's released, you know it's done something to you. I've been fortunate to handle a Datograph in platinum before. Beautiful. The size, they've done such a good job with these, really. Never handled such a crazy model like this, though, for sure. But what he wanted to try and express here is how this dial plays in light. And you can see that when you adjust it a little bit, because we're dealing with quite a transparent dial, in certain lights next to the AR coating, you've got this reverse panda aesthetic all of a sudden. No, it's not. It's a true panda aesthetic. Uber class, as Eric Bell says. Yeah. Don't worry, it's going to get better. We've got some movements to enjoy. Got some movements coming up in a second. I only saved a few, Russell. He always delivers. Yeah, he does. Funnily enough, he is a Patek person first, but he recently got into Lunga and he's got a handful of pieces. He actually offered to take me to go and pick up a new watch with him in London. I'm very tempted. I think we must. It would be so nice to go and get the full boutique experience. I haven't even been into a Lunga boutique before. Shame, a shame. Mark, thank you so much. Really, brilliant show. It really is a pleasure. The presentation, the preparation. No, I can tell you, I've done this now, 17, 18 times. And, it's becoming second nature, I think. That every single rename, just remember, like every single print you see on the left-hand side, every rename, every name attached to the watch, that's all done manually, virtually. So it's something that just is a part of the process of filing and saving, and it's crazy. You don't actually think about the work that goes into it. Eventually, it's just part and parcel of the role, right? So yeah, panda aesthetic. Love the presentation, but now we get to enjoy the movement. Now, we've spoken about movements that are made for purpose, made for utility, that aren't being made to be looked at. We had a look at some Patek movements earlier on, but now we can enjoy some macro shots of the Datograph in its full glory. And it really is just another world. The Datograph and the 1815 chrono have some of the best by far, without question. So we have an engraved balance. It's just beyond, above and beyond. So what I did was I basically highlighted, I called this balance, and then I moved to bridge or bridges. And here we can appreciate the finesse of the polishing. At the very end, I also want to mention there's another watch. There's a Lucerne Chateau that we're going to have a look at in a moment. Looks like a city. That's exactly what it's described as. And what's funny is that when you actually have it in hand, you can't believe it's possible, humanly possible, to see so much complexity on a case back. It's tiny. The watch is 39 millimeters, ladies and gents. It is small. I mean, it's a beautiful size. It's the size of a Black Bay 58 that you're wearing. When you have a look at the complexity and the depth to it, you can't believe that everything can work. Now, yeah, where to start with this? I mean, we can talk about how I want to feature your Patek next to the Datograph next time again, Russell, because there's something special about how Germans approach their chronograph movements next to the Swiss. Oh, this is a 41. Ooh, 2 millimeters off. Sorry about that. There's something quite special about how the German approach is a bit more hardcore when it comes to all of these facets. They're much heavier. Every single element here has a chamfer to it somehow. I mean, the hours that must go into all of this. Can you believe? How many jewels are in this? It's just beyond beyond my comprehension. That's for damn sure. It's just nonstop. You can just sit, and this watch really should be able to articulate that you can throw onto the wrist and wear backwards, because the movement is something that you need to appreciate. Yeah, Russell, the original is 39. That was the one. I tried the original platinum. I think Julian was the owner who had his Patek as being featured on the cover. I think he was the guy that I met, and see the community. We go through these phases of meeting people. That's nuts. So that is the Alunga Unzona Datograph case back. We will definitely explore them more in the future because it's the way. 1815 next week, we're going to be doing a video all about the development of that line. But before we go, there's one more watch that we want to focus on, and it is the Lucerne Tellurium. I can never get the damn name right. Tellurium. I got it. And we're going to focus in on this movement for a second. Now, Russell gave me a story. I'm going to whip out the phone and I'm going to read the message he sent to me about it, which is quite fascinating. Now, for those of you who don't know the Tellurium anniversary model, very unique, this being platinum, it was released like in 99, I think, and had an amazing complication that has been lost to time. People do not look at this watch in as much as they should. In fact, they're very rare, but at the same time, the complication is extremely unique. So you think to yourself, wow, this is high horology. This is really next level. So this was his message to me, saying that Lucerne tested all available movements to act as the power source for the trilogy of timepieces, the Astrolabium, the Planetarium, and the Tellurium. This was the trio. I mean, it's amazing, the history behind the UN line in general. And then in the end, they settled on ETA as by far as movement efficiency. They, of course, use chronometer-grade movements to completely work them to power their bespoke modules. On a winder, my Tellurium needs less winding than my 5711 Nautilus. The Tellurium drives a rotating Earth, a rotating moon, a bending wire for the sea lit by the sun, a dragon hand for the eclipse, a perpetual calendar ring, etc., still needs less winding than a time and date Patek. So this looks fancy, really nicely dressed up, and the dial is extremely complicated, which I still, to this day, cannot understand fully. We're looking at winter solstices. We're looking at seasonal changes. This thing can tell you, with this wire that runs around here, it basically tells you where the season is at the moment. And all these little hands and dashes here, I would have to sit with the watch and study this thing. It's enamel dial. The hours and minutes are these tritium elements here, I think. I think they're tritium. It's a crazy piece, full-on annual calendar, but it's so difficult to read if you don't know what you're looking at. You've got moon phases over here. I think you've got a tide indicator here as well. It's like the perfect surfer's watch. You can take this into the sea and, see how long it takes for it to fill with water inside. But it's a crazy machine, and it's a model that is just not looked at and appreciated by collectors because it's very outlandish, so peculiar. But I love the fact that the best part of the story is that it runs an ETA-based movement, just being dressed up and reworked. But that's what powers all of this. 1999, I think, round about then, right? Yeah. That the dial is complicated, unique, and wonderful at the same time. Yeah, I agree, Megan. I mean, it's art. It's art in a different sense when you're looking at all of these expressions. I mean, it's a little gold string of wire that runs across. It's just beautiful, really. This hobby, you will never fully be able to grasp everything going on. Russell sent me basically a PDF summarizing a book all about these three pieces and huge anniversary models back in the day. 1992. Jeez, see how bad I am with my numbers. Thanks for that, Russell. And yeah, I'll need to study this watch in detail for sure, because it is just, we've seen it a few times on the show, but it's one of the most peculiar outliers, I think, in this category. And I like how we started with an insanely modern Patek. Call it a Calatrava. I don't know if they fall in that line. And we end with this behemoth in platinum. I want to go back up to that Patek one more time. But Russell, as always, thanks for sending these in. Need to keep in touch over the week. And the watch that was featured as the main cover shot for the show is this insanely peculiar 5205G annual calendar. And the story behind this, before you go, final call, is that the owner, Julian, sold a Hulk Submariner with a bit of cash to get himself into the seat of an annual calendar Patek Philippe. That is how crazy the watch market is at the moment. So think of that for a second. A stainless steel Hulk Submariner for an annual calendar Patek Philippe, which I think this, to me, in general, the annual calendar line, there's a few that look a little bit out there, a little bit strange. This one looks so tame for what it is. And I mean, how can you not like the gray, the black, very modern, very, post-retro styled. Great. What a show. Fantastic submissions as always, ladies and gents. You've made it one hell of an experience. We've been running now for, oh my God, 3 hours, 55 minutes. And I have to call it quits before I flake out and die. But as is always the case, ladies and gents, you do always keep these shows running, keep me running. Got to stop sharing the screen and just thank you all personally. So everyone in the chat, don't even know where to start. There's 177. Sam Ray, that was very good. Got to say, you did help that development there. We've had a great time. Thomas Burnett, for everyone sending in your shots. I really appreciate the effort for all of you to do this in the first place. Forget me, collating and putting all of this together. For you to actually send these in on your own accord is special. It really is. Someone to take the time out of their day to send a wrist shot in. It might be something that you can do quickly, but still, it's work. It's something that you consciously decide to do. And it makes one hell of a show. So for all of you who have just joined or have been a part of the show throughout this 4-hour stint, just a small stint, it's been incredible. And for all 170 of you watching still, Flippin' Zippo has a great show tomorrow on Sunday, and I will be a part of it, as has been happening over the last few weeks, and I'd love to still continue. I think I need to promote you in the community page, Chris. It would be so good. It's one of the coolest shows on this platform, I think. But really, as always, and G's saying, don't stop. Jeez, yeah, I've got to stop now. What time, Russell? It's 7 p.m. our time, GMT. 7 p.m. in the UK. On the Flippin' Zippo channel. And it's such a great sit down and just banter about whatever the subjects are. We have a series about the news in the industry, and I do need to post it in the community page. Next week, I think I will, because there's no wrist shot week next week. So yeah, you guys are special. Again, thank you all so much for being a part of the show and for putting up with me and my shortcomings. 73 MAF, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. tomorrow in the UK. I don't know what it would be for the rest of the world. Eastern Standard Time. Oh God, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Yeah, you guys are fantastic. Really. Get a good rest. Enjoy your Sunday. Look after yourselves. I know this time has been a bit peculiar, especially what's going on in the world. But these kinds of shows, these things that we wear, make for amazing distractions. And that's why I love them so much, why we should all love them. So good night to you all. Good morning if you're awake. And see you soon. Cheers for now.